Before we drift into tonight's tale of the most underrated episodes of Adventure Time, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from tonight? And what time is it for you right now? Drop it in the comments below. It's always magical seeing how far and wide this sleepy little community reaches. All right, lights low, blankets up. Let's begin. Tonight, we're not chasing after the fan-favorite episodes. Not the ones plastered across listicles and best of rankings. No, we're going somewhere quieter, off the main trail, into the strange forgotten corners of Ooo. These are the episodes that didn't get the spotlight, but quietly shimmer with their own kind of magic. It's one of those episodes that passes by without much fanfare, and yet it's a world builder, a quiet gem. In it, Finn reunites with Susan Strong and follows her beneath the surface, into the crumbling ruins of what once was a thriving human colony. But here's the thing. This episode doesn't scream for your attention. It whispers. The music? Subtle. The color palette? Muted and deary. And Susan? Still a mystery. What makes Buutopia special isn't just what it shows, but what it chooses not to explain. This is Adventure Time playing long-game storytelling, planting seeds of lore with no immediate answers. We see massive, mechanical gates, sunken infrastructure, mutated beasts, glimpses of the world before the Mushroom War, or perhaps after it. And then Susan's almost words. Her strange speech, her recognition of places long gone. There's an aching feeling in this episode, a sense of deep history and broken memory. It's easy to overlook when you're young or watching quickly. But if you sit with it, let it unfold slowly. There's a quiet sadness underneath. It's an episode that asks questions and lets them linger. Season 5, Episode 36, Dungeon Train. Now here's one that gets mistaken for filler. But it's not. In Dungeon Train, Finn finds a never-ending train of monster-fighting rooms. A perfect loop of action, excitement, and endless XP. At first glance, just another fun adventure. But give it a second look, and it becomes a subtle meditation on escapism. Finn gets stuck, not physically, but emotionally. He wants to stay, to lose himself in the grind, the routine, the repetition. Why? Because he's hurting. This episode follows the fallout of his breakup with Flame Princess. And instead of dealing with that hurt, Finn dives headfirst into something that lets him avoid thinking. There's a soft darkness here. Jake sees what's happening and tries to pull Finn out. But the temptation to stay in the loop is strong. And haven't we all done that? Found ourselves repeating something just because it's easier than healing? Dungeon Train is silly on the outside, but a little haunting if you're listening closely. A surprisingly honest look at the way we sometimes numb ourselves, even in a candy-colored fantasy world. Season 2, Episode 19, Susan Strong. Yes, we already talked about Susan in Buutopia, but her first appearance deserves its own candlelit moment. This episode feels soft, innocent, almost childlike. But underneath, it cracks open a door to one of Adventure Time's deepest mysteries. Are there other humans in Ooo? Susan is curious, confused, and strong. She connects with Finn instantly. There's something primal and comforting about their bond, like two kids recognizing something ancient in each other. And then, those helmets, that tech, that strange voice command moment that powers down the monster. You feel it when you watch. Something's not right. And Finn feels it too. There's a powerful line at the end when he sings the Susan Strong song. We'll see each other soon, I know. And he's right. But it takes seasons. This episode is so gentle, you might miss the depth, but it sets off one of the most important character arcs in the whole series. If you only ever watched it once, go back. Let the quiet mystery sink in. Season 7, Episode 8. Normal Man. Yes, this is Magic Man's redemption arc, compressed into a single episode. But because it comes in the midst of stakes and islands and all the bigger arcs, it often gets passed over. But Normal Man is deeply human. Magic Man has lost his powers. He's no longer the chaotic nuisance that tormented everyone. He's just a man, stripped of identity, trying to do one thing right. The episode is filled with oddities, like Tiny Manticore, who's still bitter and dramatic. But it's also full of regret, humility, and fragile hope. There's a softness in Magic Man's eyes we never saw before. He doesn't fix everything, he doesn't ask for forgiveness, but he tries. And for a character who was so cruel for so long, trying is a radical act. The episode ends with a bittersweet kind of peace. Not triumph, not resolution, just growth. And maybe that's why people overlook it. It's not flashy. But in the quiet, it becomes one of the show's most adult, most compassionate moments. Season 6, Episode 32, Jermaine. And now, one of the most beautifully uncomfortable episodes in the series. Jermaine is about family, boundaries, and the emotional clutter we leave behind. Jake and Finn visit their brother Jermaine, who's been living alone, tending to their dead father's endless pile of cursed junk. He's tired, he's bitter, and he's been doing the hard, thankless work, alone. There's no villain here, no real action, just old wounds. Jermaine resents them. Jake is oblivious. Finn tries to make peace. And then the dreams start, symbolic, strange, a little spooky. The painting of their father burns, a new door opens. And through it all, the episode hums with the feeling of unresolved sibling tension. Something unspoken between people who love each other but don't know how to say it. It's not exciting, but it's real. And realness is rare in a world made of magic dogs and candy people. Let's stay with that feeling for a while, that soft ache of stories that are too quiet to shout, but too meaningful to forget. Because next up is an episode that feels like a quiet confession, one hidden behind a mask of silliness. Season 4, Episode 17, BMO Noir. It's easy to brush this one off as just a quirky BMO adventure. BMO dresses like a 1940s detective and investigates the mysterious disappearance of Finn's sock. On the surface, it's a joke, a parody of film noir complete with inner monologue, shadowy lighting, and a dame named Lorraine. But here's the thing. If you stay with it, really listen, it becomes something much more tender. BMO, this little robot we often treat like comic relief, is actually aching for connection, for purpose, for identity. The mystery? It's make-believe. The characters BMO interacts with, all imaginary. And that makes the loneliness hit harder. Because this episode isn't really about solving a crime. It's about BMO creating a world where they feel important. And haven't we all done that in one way or another? Built up stories, routines, or dreams just to make the quiet feel less heavy? BMO Noir is full of charm, but at its core, it's about someone longing to matter. And when the lights go low and the imaginary voices fade, they go back to just being BMO, alone again. It's sad. It's beautiful. And it's one of the most human things in the entire show. Season 6, Episode 23. The Pajama War. Here's one that often gets dismissed as pure filler. But that's the trick with Adventure Time. Even its fluffiest episodes tend to hold something unexpected. In the Pajama War, everyone in the Candy Kingdom falls into a deep sleep after Princess Bubblegum accidentally activates a mass hibernation protocol. Finn is left as the only one awake, the sole caretaker of a sleeping kingdom. And what does he do? He wanders. He takes care of small tasks. He keeps the peace. But more than anything, he's alone with his thoughts. This episode feels like a dream. No real danger. No big stakes. Just the sound of wind, the glow of sleeping faces, and Finn's quiet self-reflection. There's something soothing about watching Finn grow up through silence. Not through sword fights, not through quests, but through stillness. By the end, when the kingdom wakes, Finn doesn't even try to take credit. He just smiles, slips away, and lets the world turn again. A filler episode? Maybe. But it's also a snapshot of who Finn is becoming. Gentler, wiser, and more in tune with the world around him. Season 3, Episode 18, The New Frontier. Now here's one that leaves you feeling strange long after the credits roll. The New Frontier follows Jake as he prepares for his croak dream, a prophetic vision he believes marks his death. But what's wild is how calmly he accepts it. He's not scared, he's ready. Finn, however, panics. This episode explores something rare in a cartoon. The idea of mortality, not as a horror, but as a part of life. Jake's dream shows a cosmic butterfly, a falling comet, and a serene departure. It's peaceful, even beautiful. But Finn doesn't want to let go. He fights it, struggles against the inevitable. The tension between them is quiet, loving, and real. Jake isn't just being weird, he's practicing acceptance. And by the end, it turns out the dream didn't predict his death after all. Not this time, but it still taught both of them something. This episode rarely gets mentioned among the big ones, but emotionally, it's a heavyweight. It teaches without preaching. It lets the silence speak. And in that silence, we see what it means to be truly brave. Season 4, Episode 14, Card Wars. You might remember this one as the silly card game episode. Jake and Finn play an absurdly complicated tabletop game, and things spiral out of control. But tucked beneath the goofy game mechanics and over-the-top drama is something deeper. Jake really wants to impress Lady Rainicorn. This whole episode, it's him trying to win her approval, to be good at the things she likes, to not feel left behind. Finn, on the other hand, just wants to have fun. But the moment Jake starts losing, he flips. And suddenly, it's no longer a game. It's about pride, ego, fear of failure. We've all been there, haven't we? A harmless activity turning into something personal. What makes Card Wars underrated isn't just that it's funny, it's that it holds up a mirror to those petty, embarrassing moments we all go through. And it does it with love. It's an episode about friendship, insecurity, and the ridiculous lengths we'll go to when we care too much. And that's why it deserves more than a shrug and a laugh. It deserves a quiet nod. And maybe a second watch. Season 5, Episode 7, Davy. Now here's one that's almost eerie in how close it gets to the heart of identity. In Davy, Finn feels overwhelmed by his fame. He's tired of being recognized, praised, cheered for. So he becomes someone else. A soft-spoken, broom-wielding nobody named Davy. At first it's silly, but then something starts to shift. As Davy, Finn is invisible. And in that invisibility, he starts to feel calm. But it's not real, is it? Because he's still Finn underneath, still pretending. And when others start idolizing Davy, when even his quiet retreat becomes something special, Finn realizes that you can't really run from yourself. There's a strange sadness in this episode. It's a moment where Finn realizes being a hero isn't always about glory. Sometimes it's about being seen and choosing who you are, even when you're tired of it. It's one of those episodes that hums gently in the background of the season. But when you pull it out and hold it to the light, it's full of quiet truth. Let's keep drifting down this quiet little stream of forgotten brilliance, because the next episode we're visiting is one that truly captures the heart of Adventure Time's melancholy soul. Season 5, Episode 16, Poo Hoi. This episode is like a bedtime story folded within a dream. It begins with something simple, Finn feeling emotionally stuck. He's unsure about his relationship with the Flame Princess, and he wants to escape the weirdness of it all. So he crawls into a pillow fort. But inside that pillow fort is another world, a world made entirely of pillows, with pillow people, pillow families, a pillow war. And before you even realize what's happening, Finn grows up. He lives an entire lifetime in this other world, falls in love, has children, grows old, and in the final moment, as an old man lying on his pillow deathbed, a cosmic being appears and gently pulls his spirit back to reality. Finn wakes up, young again, as if none of it happened. Jake is still there, tossing a ball, completely unaware that his best friend just lived a whole alternate life. Poo Hoi is underrated because it's quiet, dreamlike. It doesn't yell its importance. But it holds one of the most emotionally daring concepts in the entire series. The idea that life, love, and meaning can bloom in the strangest places, even inside a pillow fort. And in the end, Finn's confusion over his feelings is eased. Because sometimes when your heart's too loud, dreaming is the only way to listen. Season 1, Episode 25, His Hero. This one's so early in the series that it often gets overlooked. But it contains something crucial, Finn's evolving understanding of what it means to be a hero. He meets the legendary Billy, his idol, a hero of the past. But Billy isn't proud of his legacy. He sees violence and fighting as a mistake. He wants peace. This rocks Finn. He's still young, still caught up in the fantasy of heroism, being about punching monsters and slaying evil. But this episode shows him that sometimes heroism is quieter. It's about healing, not hurting. The moment when Finn decides to stop fighting and use love instead to help a monster see beauty again, it's cheesy, yes, but it's genuine. And that lesson echoes through the entire series. It's one of those foundational moments that gets buried under later, bigger events. But it was there all along. His hero isn't flashy, doesn't have complex animation or epic lore reveals. But it marks the moment Finn's heart started to grow in a new direction. And that's worth remembering. Season 5, Episode 43, Root Beer Guy. Root Beer Guy. A soft, syrupy blend of mystery, midlife crisis, and one candy person's desperate need to feel useful. This episode is framed like a noir detective story, much like BMO noir. But instead of imagination, this one is very real. Root Beer Guy suspects that something's wrong in the Candy Kingdom. And when everyone else looks the other way, he investigates. His wife doesn't believe in him. His job is dull. His life feels meaningless. But this one mystery, it gives him purpose. It's an underdog story wrapped in a goofy candy coating. But underneath, it's about listening to your instincts, standing for something, and proving, maybe just to yourself, that you still matter. By the end, Princess Bubblegum actually promotes him, because he was right. It's a small win, but an earned one. And it's one of the few times we see a complete arc for a background character play out with such sincerity. It's easy to forget Root Beer Guy. But if you ever felt invisible in your own life, this episode hits quietly, but deep. Season 7, Episode 3, Cherry Cream Soda, another overlooked follow-up. This episode picks up after Root Beer Guy's presumed death. Cherry Cream Soda has moved on. She's grieving, healing. But then, he comes back, alive. And what follows is a surprisingly nuanced exploration of grief, closure, and personal change. Cherry has found new love with Starchy. But Root Beer Guy, now Dirt Beer Guy, can't accept that. There's no clear villain here, no big twist, just the painful truth that sometimes you move on, and the past doesn't. What makes this episode stand out is how gently it treats its characters. No yelling, no dramatic confrontation, just awkward silences, hurt feelings, and quiet goodbyes. It's rare to see a cartoon episode that deals with the messy middle of emotional change. But this one does it with a soft, candy-colored heart. And if you weren't paying attention, you probably missed it. But it's worth finding again. Season 2, Episode 18. Susan Strong, Revisited. Now that we've floated through so many quiet echoes of identity, love, and purpose, it feels right to return for just a moment to Susan Strong. Because the more you watch Adventure Time, the more you realize just how deep Susan's story goes. She isn't just a curious underground girl. She's a thread, woven through the show's deepest secrets. By the time you reach the Islands miniseries, you understand what this episode started. But that makes it even more special in hindsight. This isn't just an underrated episode. It's the beginning of something sacred, a breadcrumb on the path to rediscovering humanity. Watch it again with soft eyes. Let the silence between Susan and Finn mean something more this time. Let the quiet be the guide. And that is what makes these episodes so special. They're not loud. They're not dressed in climactic finales or meme-worthy moments. They whisper. They gently nudge your heart when you least expect it. They're the reason this show can be silly one moment and strangely profound the next. And they remind us that even in a land of magic, it's the soft human moments that leave the deepest imprint. But before we leave this trail of forgotten moments, let's look at just a few more. Little episodes, big in feeling. They may not have changed the course of Ooo in a loud way, but they changed something, quietly and forever. Season 6, Episode 18. Everything's Jake. This one starts out bizarre. Jake wakes up, inside himself. Yes, literally inside his own body, which has become its own dimension. At first it's goofy, a typical stretchy dog mishap. But as Jake wanders deeper into his own inner world, he meets tiny people who have lived there. Entire civilization that evolved in his organs, his bones, his thoughts. And suddenly, the episode isn't silly anymore. It's existential. Jake becomes a kind of reluctant god, a being whose body contains lives he didn't know existed. The mood shifts. The questions grow. What does it mean to be responsible for lives you didn't ask to create? What happens when you stop being a person and become a place? It's trippy, yes, but also oddly thoughtful. Jake's laid-back nature is tested here. He has to reckon with something huge, the idea that his existence isn't just his own. It's one of the strangest, most imaginative episodes of the entire series. And like so many others on this list, it's easy to miss what it's really saying if you're not watching slowly. Season 1, Episode 22, Go With Me. Let's rewind to when Adventure Time was still young. Go With Me is a classic teen drama episode. Finn wants to ask Princess Bubblegum to the movies, and Marceline steps in to help. Simple premise, right? But this little story says so much about relationships, jealousy, and that awkward in-between space where friendship gets tangled with affection. Marceline's playfulness hides something more complex. There's tension, a kind of flirtation, but also a strange protectiveness over Finn. And Bubblegum's response? Cool, distant, but not unkind. You can feel the future dynamics of these three characters beginning to form here. It's like watching the roots of a tree stretch under the soil years before it blooms. This episode doesn't scream underrated, but it is, because it's not about the plot. It's about the energy, the quiet, confusing feelings that come with growing up and wanting to be seen. Season 6, Episode 15, Nemesis. If you ever wondered whether Adventure Time could do paranoia, this is the episode. Nemesis is eerie, slow, and shrouded in suspicion. A shadowy figure named Peacemaster arrives in the Candy Kingdom, determined to purge what he sees as dark forces. And who's at the center of it all? Our sweet, secretly spooky friend, Peppermint Butler. This episode never fully reveals what's going on. Is Peppermint Butler evil? Is Peacemaster delusional? Is there a deeper game being played in the shadows? The answers remain blurry. What the episode does give us is mood, paranoia, ritual, secrecy. It's one of those stories that lingers in your mind long after it ends, not because of what happened, but because of what didn't get explained. Sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that leave a little bit unsaid. Season 4, Episode 4, Dream of Love. Now this one's just sweet and strange. Tree trunks and Mr. Pig fall in love, and their love is loud, public, over the top. So much so that others in the Candy Kingdom get uncomfortable. They try to stop the PDA to shut it down. But the core message of the episode? Love is love. Even when it's messy, even when it makes other people squirm. This might seem like a light episode, but it actually says something bold. Real love doesn't always look neat. It doesn't always follow rules. And as long as no one's getting hurt, maybe we shouldn't be so quick to police it. It's a funny little episode, sure. But behind the giggles is a gentle reminder about compassion and acceptance. And that makes it quietly powerful. Season 5, Episode 28, Be More. Let's finish this segment with one that slips through the cracks way too often. Be More is a BMO-centered episode that begins like a caper. Finn and Jake break into the MO factory to help BMO fix a glitch. But what unfolds is a soft, layered exploration of identity and memory. We see where BMO came from, the other MOs, the disconnection. And perhaps most importantly, we see how BMO chooses who they want to be. Not just a machine, not just a copy. Something unique. At one point, BMO confronts a corrupted mainframe. The voice tells them what they should be, but BMO gently resists. They're not here to obey, they're here to be. It's a quiet triumph, no fanfare, no huge transformation. Just a small robot making a very human choice and walking away. Just a little more themselves than before. So many episodes like this go unnoticed. They don't have dramatic battles or cosmic reveals, but they're filled with something even more precious, soul. They take the time to whisper instead of shout, to wander instead of sprint, to ask questions instead of answering them. And maybe, in a world full of noise and flashing lights, these soft little stories are the ones we need most of all. If you ever find yourself rewatching Adventure Time, try slowing down. Try noticing the in-between moments. Because those quiet episodes, They might just be the ones that stay with you the longest. This time we're not following Finn or Jake. Not exactly. We're following visitors. Mysterious strangers who appeared just once, maybe twice, on the stage of Adventure Time. And then were gone. But even when they left, they didn't truly disappear. Because each of them left something behind. A spell, a scar, a strange new question. Tonight we'll wander through those fleeting presences. And listen closely for echoes. Season 2, Episode 15, The Silent King. Let's begin with a forgotten oddity. In this episode, Finn becomes the reluctant king of the goblins, a strange, rule-bound society where everything, even walking or blinking, requires official permission. Remember why he becomes king? Because the previous king, the Silent King, was just gone. He ruled in complete silence. His presence was enough to keep everyone in line. But when he vanished, the whole system collapsed into absurdity. Now here's the interesting part. We never learn where the Silent King came from or where he went. Was he a god, a creature under a vow of silence? A powerful being who just got tired of ruling? It's left completely blank. And that blankness is deliberate. In his absence, Finn and Jake try to make things better, but they don't really understand the system. They try to rebel against it. But even rebellion needs permission. The whole society feels like a dream made of bureaucracy and fear. And at the center of it all, a vanished figure whose silence still holds power. The episode ends without resolution. Finn leaves. The goblins go back to their rules. But the Silent King, he stays missing. And somehow, that feels more haunting than any villain. Season 4, Episode 21. Who would win? You probably remember this episode for Finn and Jake's increasingly ridiculous fight over training routines. But do you remember the visitor? The strange glowing figure who appears mid-episode, known only as the Dream Warrior. He's ethereal, untouchable. He floats in, wrapped in mystery, offering Finn a cryptic deal. Win the fight and unlock a new kind of strength. No explanation for who he is. No origin. No motive. He appears just once. And yet, his presence has weight. He represents something, maybe ambition or ego, or the seductive promise of power if you're willing to sacrifice friendship for it. Finn listens, and for a moment you can see him consider it. But when the dust settles and the brawl cools down, the Dream Warrior is gone. Just like that. Never seen again. Was he a hallucination? A godlike entity testing their bond? Or something deeper? An echo of Finn's own hunger to grow stronger, no matter the cost. Whatever he was, he changed something. Quietly, subtly, and then left. Season 3, Episode 23. Another Way. Now this one is strange. Truly strange. The kind of episode that feels like you dreamed it and aren't quite sure it really exists. In it, Finn injures his foot and refuses to let the magical healing jelly horses help him. He runs off to find his own way to heal. But then he meets them. The clowns. With wide smiles, pastel hair, and strange chanting voices. They try to teach him another way. They feed him flowers. They sing him odd, hypnotic songs. They guide him through bizarre rituals that feel like a cult, a fever dream, and a children's show all rolled into one. Who are they? We never learn. They don't return. They're not explained, but they leave something behind. Finn's stubbornness is broken by their weirdness. His fear softens. He begins to question why he resists help in the first place. And by the end, when he does return to the jelly horses, it feels earned, not because they fixed him, but because he allowed himself to be healed. Those clowns, They may be terrifying, but they nudged Finn onto a path of self-acceptance. A lesson wrapped in absurdity. A dream disguised as nonsense. And when you wake up from it, you're left wondering what it all meant. Season 5, Episode 35. Billy's Bucket List. Ah, Billy. One of the most important characters in the show. Finn's hero, mentor, and a symbol of old-school adventure. But this episode isn't really about Billy anymore. It's about his list. After Billy's passing, Finn discovers a list of things he never got to do. And as Finn tries to complete it, we begin to see Billy through new eyes. He wasn't just brave. He was scared, too. Lonely, unsure. The bucket list becomes a map, not of heroic deeds, but of regrets, of hopes left unspoken. And then, the Lich appears, taking over Billy's body, corrupting the image of a legend. It's one of the most jarring moments in the series. A hero becomes a puppet. A body becomes a mask. But even then, even through the horror of it, Billy's final wish, the one Finn completes, is deeply human. Tell my ex I forgive her. That's what's left behind. Not a sword, not a treasure, but forgiveness, compassion. A strange visitor, once larger than life, reminding us that even legends have quiet wounds. Let's stay with that feeling for a moment, that sometimes the biggest magic isn't a spell or sword swing, but a sentence, a memory, a presence that comes and goes like mist. Billy was one of those presences. And now we drift onward to another. Season 6, Episode 4. The Tower. This episode begins with grief. Finn has lost his arm, and something inside him is unraveling. He doesn't cry, doesn't scream. Instead, he builds a tower. A massive, impossible spire of debris and junk stretching up toward space. He says he's building it to confront his deadbeat father, Martin. But the deeper truth is, he's building it to escape, to climb out of his pain. And then, as he's floating near the top, something appears. A strange, glowing version of himself, calm, otherworldly. A spectral fin shimmering in the air. This visitor isn't a monster, isn't even real in the traditional sense. But it talks. It tells Finn to abandon his anger, to stop climbing, to let go. The glowing fin says things Finn doesn't want to hear, but maybe needs to hear. Is it his subconscious? A psychic projection? A spirit? A cosmic guide? It never returns. Never explains itself. But when it vanishes, Finn's rage softens. The tower collapses, and he begins to heal, not his arm, but his heart. The visitor never gives a name, because sometimes the part of yourself that saves you doesn't have one. Season 4, Episode 26. The Lich. This episode might not feel underrated in the traditional sense. After all, it's the season finale. But what often gets overlooked is how strange the beginning of the episode is. It starts with Finn having a dream. In it, Billy appears, urging him to go on a magical quest, to gather gems, to open the Enchiridion. But something feels off. Billy's voice is hollow. His words are rehearsed. And when Finn wakes up, he listens. He trusts the dream. He follows it. The dream, Billy becomes a kind of spectral guide, an imposter, yes, but a visitor that moves the story forward. And by the end, we learn the truth. That wasn't Billy at all. It was the Lich, in disguise, infiltrating the dream realm. A visitor in Finn's most private space, his mind. And that's what makes it so haunting. Because how do you guard your heart when the visitor wears a familiar face? How do you protect your dreams when the dream wants to use you? That single act, one false visitor, fractures the multiverse, opens the door to Farm World, alters the fate of everything. A brief appearance, a devastating result. Season 5, Episode 11. Bad Little Boy. Now let's shift into something a little softer, though still strange. Bad Little Boy introduces us to Marshall Lee, the gender-swapped version of Marceline, created by the Ice King inside his fan fiction. But the way he arrives, it's like a ripple through reality. He doesn't just show up. He performs. He sings, he flirts, he teases, and then he's gone. Never once treated like just a copy. He feels real, like a visitor from a parallel world who somehow stumbled into this one, just to stir things up and vanish. The Ice King says he made him up, but the show lingers too long on Marshall Lee, gives him too much weight. And in that lingering, we're left to wonder, was this really just imagination? Or did the story briefly open a door? Did something walk through? Marshall Lee doesn't return. But his one appearance carries a strange resonance. He sings of danger and fun and rebellion. He pushes Fiona to think for herself. And then, like a dream that feels too real, he disappears. Season 6, Episode 9. The Prince Who Wanted Everything. Another story within a story. And another visitor. From a place that feels sideways to Ooo. This time it's Lumpy Space Prince. A gender-swapped echo of Lumpy Space Princess, told again through Ice King's odd little tales. But what makes this episode fascinating is the way he talks. With over-the-top dramatics with weepy flair. At first it's parody. But then it's not. His speech becomes a meditation on being misunderstood, on longing for more than just things. He wants substance. He wants to matter. And when he runs away to live with the wolves, it feels sad. Because the wolves don't understand him either. No one does. He's a visitor even in his own story. And that's what makes him so quietly tragic. Yes, he's silly. Yes, he's dramatic. But beneath all that sparkle is someone who wants to be seen. Not for his looks, but for who he really is. Now, that's a powerful thing, even if it's dressed in fluff and glitter. Season 5, Episode 6, Jake the Dad. Now, this episode is mostly remembered for its humor. Jake becoming a dad to 5 surprise puppies. But tucked into this episode is a brief appearance by a strange figure, one with almost no dialogue. The shapeshifter. Not a villain, not a friend, just a curious being who appears during the birth scene. They stare, they linger, they say nothing. And then they change form, reflecting Jake's face, watching, observing. They don't help, don't hurt, just exist. And then they're gone. It's such a small moment. Most people miss it. But who was that visitor? A spirit? A god? A forgotten creature of Ooo? No answers. Just a quiet shape in the room where life began. A witness to something sacred. And a reminder that even joy attracts strange eyes in this world. Season 4, Episode 24. I Remember You. At first glance, this episode doesn't seem like it fits here. We're used to Ice King and Marceline. They're not strangers. They've both had many episodes. But the truth is, they've been strangers to each other for a very long time. And this episode is when the walls between them start to melt. It begins with Ice King pestering Marceline for help writing a song. It's awkward. It's annoying. He doesn't seem to get why she's so upset. But then she shows him an old note, written by Simon, his old self. before the crown. A message scrawled in love and panic. A letter to the girl he protected after the war. And the Ice King doesn't remember it. Not really. But he sings it. He feels it. Just for a moment, something deep in him stirs. The visitor within, the real Simon, flickers to the surface. It's heartbreaking, because we see how much they both lost. But we also see something beautiful. Even when memories fade, some part of love stays. Simon was gone. But through music, he returned, briefly. A ghost made of melody. A presence built from pain and care. He came back. Just long enough to break your heart. And then, he was gone again. Season 3, Episode 10. What was missing? This is the episode where a magical door lord steals something from everyone in the group. Something they care about deeply. To get it back, they have to form a band and unlock the door. With truth. Now, the door lord is the obvious visitor here. But the real visitor? It's the truth itself. Because when they sing, things come out that weren't meant to be said. Feelings hidden. Tensions unspoken. Especially between Marceline and Bubblegum. Marceline sings, "I'm just your problem." And for the first time, their complicated history bubbles to the surface. You could say the door lord brought chaos. But what he really brought was clarity. He opened a space for vulnerability. Forced walls to come down. And then he vanished. No origin, no name. But he left behind something bigger than any treasure. Honesty. Raw, uncomfortable, and healing. Season 7, Episode 8. Germaine. Sometimes the strangest visitors are the ones we already know, but haven't really seen in a long time. Germaine is Jake's brother. Not a mystery, not a myth. But when Finn and Jake go to visit him at their childhood home, he feels like a ghost. He's surrounded by old paintings, clutter, spiritual energy. He speaks in tired sighs. And he's been alone for so long, maintaining their dad's house, keeping order among haunted artifacts. When you watch the episode, it doesn't feel like a reunion. It feels like stepping into a temple. Germaine has become something else, a monk, a hermit. A man weighed down by unseen burdens. He's not there to help on a quest. He's not angry or excited. He's resigned. Like time stopped for him while everyone else moved on. In that way, Germaine is a visitor. Not from another world, but from a version of the past that never got closure. And when Finn and Jake leave, he stays behind, back in the house, with the paintings, with the ghosts. Season 5, Episode 38. Red Starved. Here's a more abstract one. In this episode, Marceline, Finn, and Jake get trapped underground, and Marceline slowly begins to starve. Not for food, but for the color red. We never learn why red sustains her exactly. It's not just blood, it's something else, something older. And as she grows weaker, stranger instincts start to emerge. She begins to lose herself. This is when Marceline becomes the visitor. Not to Finn or Jake, but to us. To the version of her that's terrifying. Feral. She becomes something we haven't seen before. Something raw, almost ancient. It's a reminder that even characters we love can hold unfamiliar depths, other lives, other needs. This episode peels back the comfort and shows us a glimpse of the vampire underneath the friend. And then, once she's fed, she returns to herself. Playful, cool, sarcastic. But that shadow stays with you. Even the ones we know best can surprise us. And sometimes, they surprise themselves. Season 2, Episode 6. Slow love. Let's slow things down with a softer visitor. A gentle one. Snail-like, actually. This episode introduces Snorlock, a massive, love-struck snail who comes to Finn and Jake for dating advice. He's awkward, desperate, kind of gross, but endearing. He doesn't belong in their world. He's slower, older, not really built for romance in the same way. But he wants to try, wants to connect. And the thing is, Finn and Jake help him. Not perfectly, not wisely, but they try. They give him a chance. By the end, Snorlock finds someone like him. Another snail, quiet, lovely. And then, he's gone, never seen again. But you remember him, not because he saved the day, but because he simply wanted love. And sometimes, the most magical visitor is the one who reminds us to keep looking for connection, even when we feel out of place. Season 6, Episode 18, The Cooler. This episode gives us a visitor not from beyond, but from below. Flame Princess is having trouble in her kingdom. The heat is fading, and a mysterious chill is spreading underground. So Princess Bubblegum shows up offering her help, but she isn't the visitor. Raggedy Princess isn't either. The real stranger here is something deeper, something ancient, living at the root of the Flame Kingdom. The Cooler, an ancient heat sink, buried far beneath the flames, pulsing like the mechanical heart of a sleeping god, is not alive. It doesn't speak, but its existence changes everything. Flame Princess realizes her kingdom was artificially stabilized this entire time. Her power wasn't self-sustained, it was being balanced. And suddenly, she's forced to question. Is she a ruler, or a piece in someone else's science experiment? The Cooler never moves, never talks. But it is a presence, a visitor from before the story began. A relic of a time when magic and science weren't so far apart. And now, it's just there. Like an old scar on the world's memory. One that no one noticed until it began to ache again. Season 5, Episode 33, James. Now this one is strange in a way that's hard to explain. Princess Bubblegum and Finn journey to the post-apocalyptic wastelands of the Earth, searching for survivors. There they meet James. A cheerful, quirky candy person, clumsy and loyal. He's introduced as comic relief, the kind of character you expect to disappear at the end. But then, he sacrifices himself to save Bubblegum and Finn, and PB mourns him. Or at least, she pretends to. Because in the very next scene, we learn she made copies of him. Just printed him back into existence like nothing happened. The real James died. Or maybe he didn't. Maybe none of them are the real James. He was just a visitor to his own story. Disposable, recyclable. And what's haunting is how quietly this happens. PB shows no real remorse. And Finn never even knows. James becomes a symbol of how far Bubblegum is willing to go, of how little she's willing to feel sometimes. A strange little man, happy to serve, doomed to keep dying. A visitor whose tragedy is that he never really arrived. Season 7, Episode 4. Mama said, a gentler visitor now from the very edge of Oo's awareness. In this episode, BMO meets air, a living embodiment of, well, air. A formless, swirling spirit who sings in a voice that feels like sky. Air isn't like other characters. They don't want anything. They don't fight. They don't even fully stay. They just dance and sing and drift. But for BMO, this encounter means everything. It's a reminder of joy for its own sake. of rhythm without reason. Air leaves no lesson, no mission, no reward, just a feeling. And maybe that's the rarest kind of magic, a visitor who brings no burden, only beauty. Season 6, Episode 25. Astral Plane. This one is special. Finn's body falls asleep, but his spirit wanders. He floats through the astral plane, drifting past stars, memories, and people he loves. And in that strange, weightless place, he encounters a being who looks like himself, but older. Is it an alternate version? A future self? A dream Finn from another path? It's never made clear. But the two of them talk. About life. About meaning. About why we do what we do. This visitor isn't flashy. Doesn't have glowing eyes or a giant staff. But he's real. He feels like wisdom. Like rest. And before Finn wakes up, the visitor leaves him with a thought. You're doomed just fine. No prophecy. No pressure. Just a gentle reassurance from somewhere beyond. And maybe that's what Finn needed most. Season 4, Episode 14. Card Wars. Our final visitor isn't a god or a ghost or a dream. It's just Jake. But a Jake you haven't quite seen before. In this episode, he's obsessed. Competitive. Controlling. Card Wars isn't about monsters. It's about ego. About what happens when someone you love becomes someone you don't recognize. Jake becomes a stranger to himself, to Finn. And that version of him? It's uncomfortable, but real. The truth is, sometimes the strangest visitors are just sides of ourselves we don't want to see. But that's part of growing, part of being human, or dog, or something in between. Jake apologizes in the end. The visitor retreats. The warmth returns. But you remember it. Because it shows you that change isn't always cosmic sometimes. It's personal. So many of these characters, these shadows, these spirits, they came and went. Spoke once. Flickered once. Appeared in a dream, a mistake, a moment of silence. And still, we remember them. Not because they stay, but because something in us stayed with them. Maybe the most magical visitors are the ones who never meant to leave a mark, but did anyway. So tonight, as you drift to sleep, maybe you'll dream of strange guests, of songs half remembered, of smiles that vanished before you could ask their names. Season 5, Episode 1, Finn the Human. This episode is technically part of a big arc. The aftermath of the Lich, the multiverse split, the alternate timeline. But here's the moment that really matters. The one almost no one talks about. Finn, now living in the farm world timeline, finds the Enchiridion, and inside it, a message. Not for farm world Finn, but for our Finn. It's a soft moment. The voice in the book isn't shouting. It's calm, quiet, guiding. And that's the shift. For the first time, the multiverse speaks. The Enchiridion isn't just a book of spells. It's a messenger, a bridge, a warning. This is where the idea takes root. That timelines can touch, that versions of people echo into each other. It's not flashy. There's no big announcement, but it's a seed, planted so gently that you almost miss it. And from that seed, whole seasons bloom. Season 3, Episode 5, Too Young. Now, this one is remembered mostly for a fun premise. Princess Bubblegum de-ages to 13, and she and Finn have a brief, adorable crush connection. But here's what most people miss. At the end of the episode, she re-ages herself back to 18, to reclaim the throne, to restore stability, to rule. And in doing so, she quietly steps away from Finn. Not just in age, but emotionally. This is the moment that defines their dynamic for the rest of the show. The boundary. The wedge. Peebee's decision isn't framed as dramatic. There's no big speech. She just says, "I can't leave the Candy Kingdom like this." It's framed as noble, logical. But under that, it's heartbreaking. Finn's hopeful little crush is left behind in that moment. And so is something soft in PB. They still care for each other. But it changes. This was the line. And it was crossed without fanfare. Season 5, Episode 2. Jake the Dog. This episode is often remembered for its cosmic visuals. Prismo's time room. The wish-altering chaos, the multiverse, unfolding like a deck of cards. But here's the moment that goes unnoticed. When Jake makes his wish, he hesitates. He could have fixed everything. He could have wished the Lich out of existence. But instead, he wishes for a sandwich. It's played for laughs. But in that small, strange choice, we learn everything about Jake. He's not a save-the-world kind of guy. He's not chasing destiny. He lives in the now. He wants comfort. And this moment, it silently establishes his role for the rest of the series. He's not the chosen one. He's the anchor, the heart, the one who keeps Finn grounded, even when the stars are screaming. Season 2, Episode 24, Mortal Folly. Now this episode is epic. It's the big introduction of the Lich. The stakes are sky high. But the quiet shift happens before the final fight. Finn receives advice from the snail. Yes, that snail. Infected by the Lich, the snail waves, smiling, innocent. But this is the very first hint that evil in Ooo is subtle. It hides in plain sight. In sweetness, in smiles, in silence. It's a brief image, a flash. But it changes how you see every frame after that. Nothing is ever just cute again. Because now you know. The darkness has roots, and it spreads in whispers. This wasn't just an introduction to the Lich, it was the tone shift for the entire show. Season 5, Episode 37, Box Prints. On the surface, this episode is just silly. Finn and Jake stumble into a war between sentient cats and a cardboard box kingdom. But somewhere beneath the ridiculousness, there's a mirror. The box. Prince isn't brave. He's awkward. He doesn't speak well. He's unsure of his place. Finn decides to help him, based on almost nothing. A feeling. A gut instinct. And the way Finn fights for him, not with him. That's the shift. Finn starts to become less of a warrior and more of a protector. He begins to care about people who aren't fighters, who aren't flashy, who aren't him. The episode doesn't say that out loud, but it happens in Finn's choices. And when it ends, you realize something in him is growing up, not through battle, but through empathy. Season 1, Episode 25. His hero. We're going back now, to the early days. To when Finn still wore his heart on his sleeve and Jake was just beginning to understand what being a hero really meant. In this episode, Finn meets his childhood idol, Billy, a legendary warrior, a monster slayer, the kind of hero Finn wants to grow into. But here's the thing. Billy doesn't fight anymore. He doesn't believe in it. He tells Finn, being a hero means helping people, not hurting them. And it rattles Finn. Not with thunder, but with a quiet weight that lingers in his chest. The whole episode plays out as a tug-of-war between idealism and reality, between the fantasy of what it means to be brave and the wisdom that maybe kindness is harder than swinging a sword. Billy's advice is a single line, soft, unflashy. But from this point forward, Finn starts to question what it means to be good. Starts to look for other ways to solve problems. It doesn't change him instantly, but the idea is planted and it grows across seasons. From shouting battle cries to letting go of the fight, a new kind of hero is born. Not from a battle, but from a quiet disappointment. Season 6, Episode 3, James II. Let's return to a character we already mentioned, James. Only this time, it's his clone, one of many. In this episode, one of the new Jameses is honored as a hero, James II. He's celebrated, elevated. But deep down, something is wrong. The Jameses, they're hollow. Not evil, not broken, but not real. Bubblegum made them, printed them into existence. And now they're taking on roles that used to belong to actual people. There's no fanfare around this shift, no dramatic confrontation. But something has quietly changed in the Candy Kingdom. The line between life and creation has blurred. PB isn't just building candy people anymore. She's creating legacies, filling history with simulations. And no one notices, because it's all covered in sweetness and applause. This is the moment we begin to question. How far will Bubblegum go? How much control does she really want? It doesn't scream, but it whispers into future episodes and into our trust. Season 7, Episode 9. The more you mow, the more you know. Part 1. BMO is usually comic relief. Light, adorable, full of goofy songs and weird dreams. But in this episode, something shifts. BMO meets Mo, his creator. And suddenly he has a past. An origin. A purpose that wasn't just fun and games. Mo calls him a little machine. And just like that, BMO begins to wonder. Was he always just a tool? We get glimpses of sadness in BMO. Moments where he questions his freedom, his selfhood. It's quiet, unspoken, but it settles under his circuits like fog. From this moment on, BMO feels different, still sweet, still strange, but deeper, haunted in a small and subtle way. The fun-loving robot becomes a child grappling with the truth that maybe someone built him to be the way he is. And maybe that's okay. Or maybe not. It's never resolved. But that seed of doubt, it never leaves. Season 3, Episode 7. Still, this episode is often overlooked. A filler. A funny one. Ice King paralyzes Finn and Jake while they sleep, just to hang out with them. But under the silliness, there's a strange quiet ache. Ice King wants company. He's lonely. He says things that sound like jokes, but they land a little too softly. I just wanted to be part of your party, he mutters. His voice cracks just a little. Finn and Jake are frozen, unable to move. And that helplessness mirrors something larger. No one can really reach Ice King, not even himself. This moment isn't huge. No magic spell is broken. No lore is revealed. But we see it. The first real glimpse of Simon's loneliness under the madness. The childlike desperation. The pain of being funny, but forgotten. This is the crack in the wall, and later, Marceline will step through it. Season 1, Episode 11. Wizard. Let's go way back. Finn and Jake join a magic school, tempted by the promise of learning powerful spell. But as they rise through the ranks, they realize the final lesson involves giving up their humanity, becoming something else. They refuse, and they leave. A simple moral, right? But look closer. This is the first moment Finn is offered power he doesn't understand. And the first time he says no. That matters. Because from here on out, Finn will keep facing that question. Will you chase strength at the cost of self? It happens again with the grass sword, with the Flame King, with the Lich. And it all starts here, with a silly old wizard and a boy who says, "No thanks." It's easy to miss, but it echoes through everything that follows. Season 2, Episode 15. The Real You. At first glance, this episode seems light. Finn gets invited to a science barbecue. He wants to impress Princess Bubblegum, so he borrows some magic glasses from Magic Man that let him see the truth. But that's where things quietly bend. As soon as he puts them on, Finn sees more than just reality. He sees deeper reality. The fabric of things. Equations floating in the air, threads of energy, patterns behind faces. And very quickly, it overwhelms him. He loses control. He begins to unravel, not physically, but mentally. He can't hold on to who he is when too much truth floods in. And here's the moment. This is the first time Adventure Time introduces the idea that knowing too much is dangerous. That there are layers to the world that maybe we shouldn't fully understand. And from this point on, the show will begin to flirt more and more with those ideas of hidden knowledge, of cosmic forces, of truths that break the mind. It all starts with a boy, a pair of glasses, and a truth he wasn't ready for. Season 4, Episode 11. Beyond this earthly realm. This one is quietly eerie. Finn accidentally enters a spirit dimension, a misty, color-shifted version of Ooo, where the dead and the unseen drift. No big portal, no massive spell. He just slips through. Because of a cursed ceramic duck. And what he finds there isn't horror. It's emptiness. Loneliness. Spirits float around, unseen by the living. Trapped in loops. Forgotten. And here's the shift. This is when Finn realizes that Ooo has another layer. That the world doesn't end at what you can see. That even the past is still lingering. It's subtle. It's soft. But it opens the door to everything that comes later, the nightosphere, the time room, the multiverse, Gulb. It starts with a cursed duck and ends with the realization that the dead are never really gone. Season 6, Episode 7. Food Chain. This one's a fever dream. Finn and Jake go on a field trip to the Candy Kingdom's museum. And suddenly, they're transformed into different creatures in a full-on food chain simulation. Birds, worms, microbes, flowers. Over and over again. There's no clear logic. No villain. Just cycles. It's weird. Experimental. Often overlooked. But the quiet shift here is existential. This is when the show first introduces the idea that life isn't linear. It's cyclical. That existence is more than identity, it's role. You can be a predator in one life and prey in the next. And here's the twist. Finn doesn't hate it. He adapts, learns, accepts. This isn't about fighting back. It's about flowing through change. And that's a perspective that carries forward into later seasons, especially in how Finn relates to reincarnation, destiny, and who he's meant to be. This episode doesn't scream meaning. It hums it. Soft and strange, like a lullaby in another language. Season 2, Episode 9. Death in Bloom. Finn and Jake kill a plant by accident. Seems like a small problem, right? But it sends them straight to the land of the dead. And here we meet Death for the first time. He's not a monster, not a demon, just tired. And here's the quiet change. This is when the show tells us that death isn't an enemy. It's a function, a being, a person. And more than that, it's negotiable. Jake plays a music battle against death. They don't fight with fists or flames. They jam, and they win. From this point on, death in Ooo isn't final. It's a character, a system, sometimes even a joke. But it all starts here, in a dusty room, with a skeleton and a keyboard solo. And it changes everything we know about the stakes in this world. You don't have to stay dead, but you do have to make it worth it. Season 4, Episode 9, Princess Monster Wife. This episode is deeply unsettling. Ice King, in one of his lowest moments, creates a wife by stealing parts from other princesses. It's horrifying. It's wrong. But somehow it's also tragic. Because what we see, what no one really talks about, is how deeply, terribly Ice King is trying to love. He builds a patchwork partner, sings to her, dotes on her, and when she realizes what she is, she leaves. Not in anger, but in sadness. She wants to be whole. She wants to be real. And she walks into a lake, disappearing. It's one of the most painful scenes in the whole show. Because it's not about the villain being punished. It's about loneliness, creating something that never should have existed, and then losing it. This is the moment Ice King stops being funny and starts being tragic. Not because he's evil, but because he's empty. And that quiet heartbreak, it stays with him and with us. Still awake, dreamy traveler? All of these little moments, the glasses, the lake, the duck, the music battle, they don't shout. They don't ask to be remembered. But they are the roots of the tree. The reason everything above them grows the way it does. One last piece of this puzzle still remains. Season 7, Episode 13, Angel Face. This episode's premise is pure silliness on the surface. Jake puts on a cowboy hat that turns him into a Wild West outlaw version of himself. But as the episode rides on, the line between role play and identity blurs. Jake isn't pretending anymore. He's becoming. And here's the quiet shift. This is the first real indication that Jake's sense of self is loose. That his shape-shifting isn't just physical, it's mental. Who he is depends on who he's being at any moment. Later, in deeper lore episodes like Abstract, we'll see Jake fully question who he is at all, but Angel Face is the nudge. The moment the idea starts to form quietly behind the laughs, can a person with no fixed form truly have a fixed identity? Jake doesn't ask the question here. But the hat does. And it never takes it back. Season 5, Episode 31, Too Old. You might think this episode is just about Finn trying again to win over Princess Bubblegum. But it's not. Not really. The real shift happens in the background. Lemongrab. He's changed. He used to be weird, unstable, screechy, but not cruel. But here he's cruel. He doubled himself. He controls everything in Lemongrab land with rigid tyranny. There's no big lore drop. No giant exposition. Just unease. And you realize something's gone wrong. PB created him, then let him fester. And now he's hurting people. There's a slow, terrible realization baked into this episode. Not all problems can be fixed by love. Some, especially the ones we make ourselves, grow beyond us. Lemongrab doesn't scream the shift. He whispers it through every unsettling frame. And we start to see PB not just as a genius, but as a creator who made a being she doesn't know how to unmake. Season 8, Episode 7, Normal Man. Magic Man, once the most chaotic, cruel, and unhinged being in Ooo, has lost his powers and become Normal Man. At first, it's played as redemption. He's changed. He's sorry. But the real shift, it's in how he changes. He doesn't earn forgiveness through a grand act. He doesn't fix everything. He just tries, stumbles, fails, and keeps trying. Adventure Time rarely gives redemption arcs in the traditional sense. But this is what forgiveness actually looks like. It's not neat. It's not immediate. And it's not a reward. It's a choice, over and over again. And from this point on, we begin to believe that even the worst people maybe aren't lost forever, even if no one's clapping for them. Season 2, Episode 16, Guardians of Sunshine. This episode feels like an early days gimmick. Finn and Jake get sucked into a video game world. But here's the change. When they enter the digital realm, they die. Not for real, but close. And when they come back, they're different. Not shaken, just aware. This is the show's earliest experiment with virtual space, other dimensions, and simulation. And later, when we get to episodes like Islands and Come Along With Me, that idea explodes into something massive. This is the moment it started. The seed that says, maybe the world isn't as solid as we thought. It's pixelated. It's simple, but it's the first tap on the fourth wall, and it echoes into the finale. Season 9, Episode 4, Cloudy. This one is quiet, literally. Finn and Jake are stuck in a cloud. No battles, no villains. Just a storm they can't get out of. And so they talk. About fear, about death, about their differences. About why they do what they do. Jake tells Finn something deeply honest. That he pretends to be okay when he's scared. That he hides how scared he is, for Finn's sake. And Finn, in turn, realizes he's not alone. That Jake isn't invincible. That they both carry each other. There's no plot twist. No magical transformation. Just the slow realization that being strong doesn't mean being fearless. And being brave doesn't mean being alone. This episode is the heart of their friendship laid bare. And it marks the beginning of Finn maturing into someone who listens. Not just fights. A moment with no music. Just wind. And love. Season 10, Episode 1. The Wild Hunt. Right at the end, we get a moment. Finn kills a monster. And then, he regrets it. He's changed since Season 1. He doesn't celebrate victories with cheering anymore. He mourns. That monster didn't want to hurt anyone. It was scared. And Finn knew that. This is the final piece of the journey that began way back with Billy. Way back when Finn thought being a hero meant slaying monsters. Now it means understanding them. Even when it hurts. There's no narration to explain the shift. No spell to mark it. Just Finn. Standing alone. Quietly grieving a creature no one else will remember. But we will. Because that was the moment he became something bigger than a hero. Became kind. This segment is about those episodes. The ones where everything softened. Where the art got more painterly. The music more tender. The silences more meaningful. These are the moments where Adventure Time stopped yelling and started whispering beauty. Let's begin with the simplest one of all. Season 6, Episode 17. Ghostfly. This one might not seem beautiful at first. It's a Jake-centric episode. Kind of weird and spooky. There's a ghost. There's a bug. There's some toilet humor. But something happens about halfway through. Jake sits alone in the dark in a quiet room. And he talks to the ghostfly. Not as a fighter. Not as a joke. But as someone who's trying to understand. The room is lit only by a flickering bulb. The music is minimal, and Jake's voice drops to a gentle, almost hushed level. He listens. And that's where the beauty is. It's not about the bug. It's about how Jake treats the bug. With patience. With care. With curiosity. It's a small shift. But the whole show starts to feel different after that. It's no longer about conquering the weird. It's about hearing it. Season 6, Episode 16. Joshua and Margaret Investigations. This one dives into the past. We see Finn's parents, Joshua and Margaret, as young investigators solving paranormal mysteries in noir-style lighting and hushed narration. It's cool and fun, sure. But underneath that, it's tender. It's loving. It's a soft tribute to two people who raised a child in a broken world and gave him a chance to be whole. The color palette is warm and muted. The music is low, jazzy, and slow, and the pacing is relaxed, like an old photo album slowly flipping open. In one of the final scenes, Margaret holds baby Finn after the case is over. She sings to him, quietly, off-key, and that's when it hits. The show isn't just about weird monsters or goofy wizards. It's about how people love each other, even when they're gone, even when they're forgotten. It's beautiful, because it's honest, and it lingers in your chest like a lullaby. Season 5, Episode 28, Be More. This one's about BMO, but not in the usual giggly way. BMO returns to the factory where he was built, Be More Labs, and what we find there is quietly heartbreaking. Rows of decommissioned BMOs, strange robotic rituals, an almost church-like reverence for function. And BMO? He just wants to be good. To be more, not more powerful, not more useful, just more himself. The art style is clinical, cold, sterile. But BMO's warmth glows brighter because of that. And as he walks alone through that building, tiny, innocent, uncertain, the silence becomes loud. You feel the distance between who he is and what he was meant to be. The episode ends not with a victory, but with BMO realizing that identity isn't programmed. It's chosen. And choosing to love yourself in a world that built you to be a tool, that's beautiful. In the gentlest way. Season 4, Episode 25. I Remember You. This one doesn't need much introduction. If you've seen it, you know. Ice King and Marceline, sitting at a keyboard, writing a song. It's not a love song. It's not a sad ballad. It's something deeper. It's two people, tied by trauma, by memory, by loss, trying to reach each other through music. The lighting is dim. The colors are desaturated. The space between lines stretches long, long enough for the weight to settle. Simon doesn't remember, but Marceline does. And in her voice there's grief, and forgiveness, and grace. The show could have shouted this story. Instead it sang it, softly, brokenly, beautifully. It's not just one of the greatest episodes of Adventure Time. It's one of the most haunting pieces of animation ever aired. And it changed the show forever. And now we drift deeper into the moments where silence said everything. Season 5, Episode 37, Box Prints. Yes, we touched on this one earlier for its subtle growth in Finn. But now, let's look at it through a different lens. This episode is bizarre. Talking cats, cardboard kingdoms, pretend wars. But at the center of it all, a moment that's almost completely still. Finn helps the Box Prince reclaim his throne. But when the battle is done, there's no celebration. Just peace. No music. No cheering. just the quiet resolution of a silly, imaginary conflict. And that's the shift. The show doesn't mock the absurdity. It embraces it. It says, yes, this is silly, but it matters because they believe in it. There's a kind of gentle respect in that. That even play, even nonsense, deserves dignity. And that makes it beautiful. Season 6, Episode 25, Astral Plane. Here's one of the most underrated quiet episodes. It's almost completely still. Finn's consciousness is floating, literally, outside his body through the cosmos. He drifts past planets, spirits, animals dreaming, philosophers thinking, and all the while he's just watching, not saving anyone, not fighting, not even talking much. There's a voiceover, Finn's thoughts, wandering, reflecting. And what emerges is a sense of scale, of silence, of softness. He sees that life continues even when you're not the center of it, even when you don't do anything. It's a moment of surrender. Finn's most heroic act here is letting go. And that realization, that the world doesn't need saving all the time, it just needs witnessing, that's where the beauty lives. Season 7, Episode 6. Marceline, the Vampire Queen. On paper, this episode is about Marceline trying to rid herself of her vampires. But listen closely. Watch the frames. Feel the pace. This episode isn't about action. It's about exhaustion. Marceline is tired of being immortal, of being misunderstood, of watching the world pass her by while she stays unchanged. And for a large part of the episode, she's just sitting, or lying in bed, or watching the sky. There's no rush, no jokes, just silence, and stillness, and a sense of being very, very small in a world too big to hold on to. The art shifts, too. Colors go pale, lines soften. It starts to feel like a memory. And when Marceline sings quietly to herself, barely audible over the wind, it doesn't feel like an episode anymore. It feels like grief, a soft, beautiful kind. The kind that doesn't ask for sympathy, only understanding. Season 8, Episode 12, High Strangeness. This is a tree trunks episode, but not the usual kind. This one goes somewhere else. Aliens visit. There's abductions, glowing lights, strange whispers. But it doesn't play like a sci-fi romp. It plays like a dream. Much of the dialogue is whispered. The sky is always either glowing or silent. And Tree Trunks, who's usually loud and peppy, becomes something otherworldly. She talks slowly, almost as if she knows something we don't. There's no panic, just a calm unraveling of secrets. That Tree Trunks might be more than she appears. That maybe she's never really belonged to this world. It's eerie, yes, but also beautiful. Because instead of trying to explain everything, the episode leaves space. Space for wonder. Space for the unknown. And that space feels like peace. Season 10, Episode 4. Bonnibel Bubblegum. This one is quiet in its own way. It's the story of Princess Bubblegum's early days. Her rise to power, her loss of family, her desperate need to build something safe. And instead of telling us all this with narration, we see it. Through images, through still frames of loneliness, through nights spent alone with the test tubes and blueprints, she creates the Candy Kingdom. But at what cost? The beauty here is bittersweet. It's the ache of creation born from solitude. The realization that order was Bubblegum's way of surviving grief. She didn't make the kingdom out of ambition. She made it out of need. to feel in control, to not lose anyone else. And the episode doesn't judge her. It just lets her be. Strong, lonely, brilliant, afraid. The quiet is thick in this one. And in it, we finally understand her, not as a ruler, but as a girl who built a world because the real one hurt too much. These episodes didn't raise their voices. They didn't push you toward meaning. They invited you to sit beside it. And that's what makes them beautiful. They trusted you to feel it, in the pauses, in the glances, in the quiet between breaths. Season 9, Episode 11, Temple of Mars. It starts with a journey. Jermaine, Jake's rarely seen brother, joins normal man on a strange quest into the Temple of Mars, a place that bends time, memory, and reality. But what makes this episode quietly stunning is the absence of urgency. There's no big villain, no chaos, no rush to the end. Instead, the temple seems to move with them, or perhaps through them. It reflects their fears, their regrets, their buried thoughts. And it becomes clear. This isn't about finishing a quest. It's about learning to move forward without resolution. Jermaine has long felt trapped in his duty, looking after their father's weird, magical estate. Normal man, formerly Magic Man, is still grasping at redemption. And the temple? It doesn't offer them closure, just perspective. Quiet nudges toward acceptance. The art soften. Colors bleed into each other like watercolor. There are long silences. Just walking, looking, feeling. And by the time they leave, they're not fixed. They're just lighter. Like the quiet, let something go. Season 10, Episode 10. Come Along With Me. Finale. Yes, this is the grand finale. Yes, it has battles and montages and stakes. But nestled deep inside its beating heart is stillness. Amid the war, BMO sings. A song we've heard before, but now it feels like a goodbye. Come along with me, and the butterflies and bees, the world collapses. But the music is soft. Finn and Fern lie in the grass, hand in hand. No words, just the sky. Later, we jump far into the future. Two new adventurers walking the same land. Looking out over Ooo, now strange and familiar. And again, the song. The final images aren't of triumph. They're of continuity, of memory, of quiet life continuing. No thunder. Just legacy. Just peace. The show doesn't end on a bang. It ends on a breath. And that's what makes it beautiful. Season 8, Episode 14. Whispers. This one seems like it's going to be dark. Finn hears strange voices. The Lich is involved. Something big is brewing. But then, the twist. The voices? They're coming from within Sweet Pea, the child form of the Lich. And instead of fighting, Finn and Jake listen. There's a moment where Sweet Pea stands in a field. The camera pulls back. There's no music, just wind, just stillness. He's scared. He doesn't understand what he is. But instead of running, he asks for help. And that moment, of vulnerability in the quiet, hits harder than any battle. It's not about defeating evil. It's about healing it, even when it whispers. Even when it's still inside you. And the show doesn't rush it. It just lets it happen. Soft. True. Season 5, Episode 38. Red Starved. Now this one seems like another goofy, high-stakes quest. Finn, Jake, and Marceline get trapped in a cave. There's ancient relics, magical energy, danger. But then it gets quiet. Really quiet. Marceline gets hungry. She hasn't fed in too long. And the episode shifts. Her voice gets slower. Her movements lag. She becomes fragile. Not monstrous. Not dangerous. Just tired. There's a haunting sadness in it. Not because she's going to hurt someone, but because she doesn't want to. She hates this part of herself. And in one quiet moment, she pulls away, choosing hunger over harm. That restraint, that silence, that's the real heroism. The beauty in this episode is buried under stone and darkness. But it's there, flickering like a match in a cave. Season 8, Episode 3, Bespoken For. This is one of the most unusual atmospheric episodes in the series. Flame Princess and Cinnamon Bun go on a diplomatic mission, and what they find is not just politics, but a strange ancient kingdom of whispers and shadow. The beauty here lies in the details. The slow pans, the golden flickers of firelight, the echo of footsteps in ancient halls. It's an episode about diplomacy, yeah? But really, it's about restraint. Flame Princess, once known for rage, now holds back, listens, navigates with grace. And Cinnamon Bun, once a literal pile of dough, now carries himself like a knight. The episode doesn't tell you how far they've come. It shows you, quietly, subtly, through how they walk, how they don't raise their voices. It's growth, told in glances. And it's beautiful. Season 5, Episode 14. Simon Marcy. This episode is a lullaby wrapped in a flashback. One of the most beloved and one of the most beautifully still. We travel back to the days after the Mushroom War, to a ruined Earth, to Simon and a very young Marceline, walking side by side through apocalypse and silence. There's no score here for long stretches, just the soft crunch of footsteps, the far-off echo of broken cities. And Simon, he's slowly losing himself. The crown is protecting them, yes, but it's also stealing him. Memory by memory. There's a scene where he gives Marcy a can of chicken noodle soup and sings her a song. "Daddy, why did you eat my fries?" It's funny, but her eyes glisten. Because even though he's still there, she can see what's coming, that she'll lose him. But she stays. She loves him, even when it hurts. And he, even in his unraveling mind, he tries to protect her. That's what makes this episode beautiful. It's a story about loss that isn't tragic. It's tender, softened by loyalty, wrapped in memory. No villain. No magic tool, just the pain of watching someone fade and choosing to love them anyway. Season 10, Episode 11. Gumbaldia. This is the quiet before the storm. The episode before the finale. But instead of ramping up tension, it slows down. There's a strange calm over everything. The skies are still. Everyone is preparing for war. But the characters? They're thinking, reflecting. PB walks through her childhood. Finn sits beside her. There's barely any music. Just wind. Just breath. Jake doesn't crack jokes. He's present. Even Ice King, confused and adrift, seems to sense the change in the air. It's the beauty of anticipation. Not for battle, but for change. The calm is unsettling, but also beautiful, because we feel it too, like the world is holding its breath. And in that stillness, we say goodbye to the Ooo we've known. Season 9, Episode 6, Bananas. This one is almost entirely about nothing. Just Finn trying to write a poem. About a banana. But it's not really about the poem. It's about trying to say something when your heart doesn't know how. Throughout the episode, Finn distracts himself, fails, gets lost in chores and chaos. But the poem, it's always just out of reach. And finally, when he stops, when he sits down and lets the feeling come through, he writes, not something perfect, not something poetic, but something honest. That's where the quiet beauty lies, in trying, in creating, in letting yourself feel something, even if it doesn't come out right. Art born not of skill, but of heart. Season 7, Episode 13, The Dark Cloud. We end the Stakes miniseries with something unexpected. Not destruction, not horror, but grace. Marceline has reclaimed her soul. She's human again. The battle is over. And as the dark cloud fades, she sings. Everything stays, but it still changes. The visuals are soft. Gentle pans over twilight. No cuts, just motion. Like falling asleep while someone brushes your hair. The episode doesn't scream, "Look, Marceline's arc is complete." It whispers, "She's found peace. And so have we." It's not triumphant. It's peaceful. The way dawn is peaceful. And that's what makes it one of the most quietly beautiful moments in the whole show. A final moment. One that barely counts as an episode. It's just a few seconds. In the finale, Come Along With Me. As BMO sings alone, we cut to Marceline and Bubblegum. They're sitting beside each other. No dialogue. No kiss. Just hands held. Heads resting gently. Nothing flashy, but everything real. That tiny moment, it's what all of this was leading toward. Understanding. Connection. Stillness. Love doesn't always need music, and sometimes it just needs presence. And that's what these quiet episodes gave us. They let characters just exist. Not to advance plot, not to deliver twists, but to be. And in that being, we saw ourselves. So if you're still awake, still listening, still tucked in, let this segment rest gently on your thoughts. Because beauty doesn't always shout. It doesn't always sparkle. Sometimes it's a quiet room, a soft hum, a memory with no words. And sometimes the most beautiful part of the story is the part that doesn't try to impress you. It just sits beside you, like a friend who doesn't need to say anything at all. Tonight, we're peeling back the layers of Ooo once more, but this time we're heading somewhere bright, somewhere sugary, somewhere soft on the outside, but deeply strange on the inside. We're heading to the Candy Kingdom, and beyond it, into the hidden science of Ooo. Because here's the thing, Adventure Time looks magical. Flying rainicorns, ice wizards, talking pastries. But underneath all that sweetness lurks science. Odd, broken, mutated, beautiful science. It's not just fantasy. It's failed experiments, artificial life, genetic tinkering. Biotech gone a little sideways. And no one represents this better than the ruler of sugar herself, Princess Bubblegum. But let's not rush. Let's slip gently into this strange candy-coated world and see what's really going on behind those bright pink walls. First up, the candy people. They're adorable, funny, goofy, lovable. But have you ever noticed how weird they are? They don't really reproduce. They're made, constructed, in labs, sometimes grown, sometimes mixed in vats, sometimes literally baked. We've seen PB build them from scratch, mixing sugar and goo, adding sentience like an ingredient. And they're loyal to her, almost uncomfortably so. This isn't accidental. PB is a biochemist, a genius engineer who controls the makeup of her citizens. She isn't just their ruler. She's their creator. And the deeper implication? The Candy Kingdom isn't just a monarchy. It's a petri dish, a long-term science experiment with citizens made to obey. Sweet on the outside, but the ethics, far less sugary. And the candy people themselves seem to know. They often act afraid, confused, childlike. Not because they're stupid, but because they were engineered that way. You start to realize Oo's most wholesome kingdom might also be its most artificial. And Princess Bubblegum? She might be their mother. But she's also the scientist behind the glass. Gumball, the failed prototype. Let's go further. To Gumball, PB's long-lost uncle. But more than that, her first failed experiment. Before there was a candy kingdom, there was a tiny civilization PB tried to build. She created Gumball and others from candy materials, trying to make grown-up, smart, capable candy citizens. But they didn't agree with her. They wanted independence, power. So what did she do? She dumped them in dumb juice. Literally rewired their minds. Turned them into simpletons. She didn't debate them. She altered them. And that moment is chilling. Because it reveals a side of PB that the bright pink gloss usually hides. She doesn't just rule her people. She controls them. And when her first attempt at sentient candy citizens didn't go her way, she flipped the switch. Turned the experiment back to factory settings. This wasn't magic. This was science. Cold. Precise. Terrifying. And Gumball never forgot. He spent decades trying to reverse what was done to him. Trying to reclaim his mind. His rebellion isn't just about politics. It's about identity. Trying to claw back personhood that was chemically stripped away. And suddenly, a candy-coated conflict becomes something deeper. A debate about free will. Memory. Science without empathy. All hidden in jars of pink goo. The science of Princess Bubblegum. Herself, But now, let's turn the microscope on PB. She seems composed. Regal. Logical. Have you ever wondered what she is? She's made of gum. And not just metaphorically. Literally. Her form is elastic. Remoldable. She can regrow herself if injured. Stretch, expand, even melt and reform. And over time, her personality has subtly changed. This isn't magic. It's instability in her chemical makeup. She once stated, "I'm not even sure I'm still the same person I used to be." And that line is more than just poetic. She may actually be changing at a molecular level, breaking down, reassembling. Each time she regenerates, she may be slightly, different. Which begs the question, is Princess Bubblegum truly one continuous person, Or is she a sequence of versions, each one built from the sticky remains of the last? And how much of her rule is shaped by this instability? How much of her logic, her sometimes ruthless decisions, come from the quiet panic of knowing her very self might be melting day by day? That's not just science fiction. It's science drama. It's existential. And it's hiding under a pink lab coat. Peppermint Butler, the arcane biochemist. Ah, yes. Peppermint Butler. He's adorable. Polite. Always ready with tea or towels or dark necromantic rituals. Wait, what? Yeah. Peppermint Butler is one of the clearest bridges between magic and science in Ooo, and he hides it with a smile. He's seen summoning ancient being, opening dimensional rifts, and even conducting experiments on himself. In Wizard City, we learn he split his soul into a younger version of himself. A magical reset. An attempt to purge his dark knowledge, but preserve his curiosity. But the science is there, lurking beneath. He studies essences, talks of transference of magical mass. He builds with magic, like a scientist builds with circuits. And it raises a question. Is Oo's magic just misunderstood science? Peppermint Butler seems to think so. And his entire existence is proof that knowledge in Ooo is rarely what it seems. You can wear a bow tie and still keep eldritch notebooks under your bed. It's funny, but it's also eerie. Because if the Candy Kingdom has a royal court scientist of the dark arts, how many other secrets are being tested in its underground libraries? The hidden labs beneath the Candy Kingdom. Let's go underground now. Because yes, there are labs, and they go deep. We've seen glimpses, hallways lit in green. Shelves of preserved candy parts, vats of bubbling pink, storage rooms that look more like abandoned bunkers. There are scenes, quiet scenes, where PB walks alone down these sterile corridors. No music, just the faint hum of generators. She's not smiling. She's working, not on spells, on processes, genetic modifications, chemical stability formulas. This isn't Hogwarts. It's Silicon Valley meets Willy Wonka, with ethics blurred into the frosting. And some of the things she keeps locked up, not monsters, not enemies, but failed versions of the Candy People. One eye too big, one voice too sharp, one body too unstable, put into cold storage, silently forgotten. It's a haunting thought. That the kingdom built on joy has a basement filled with discarded joy filtered out for being imperfect. And again, no one talks about it. But it's there, in the quiet, waiting. Lemongrab, a screaming experiment gone wrong. We touched on him before. But let's pause, look closer. Lemongrab is often treated as comic relief, loud, shocking, ridiculous. But he's something far more unsettling, a genetic anomaly created by PB. Her attempt to branch beyond sugar-based life. He's made of lemon, yes? But not in the sweet way. He decomposes faster, needs shock therapy to remain stable, is emotionally volatile to the point of collapse. And what's worse, he knows he was a mistake. You can hear it in his voice sometimes, beneath the screeching. Moments where he whispers, "I don't feel right." Or where he looks around his empty halls and murmurs, "This castle is full of nothing." He builds clones to have company. He screams at silence. He tries to control everything around him, because he can't control what he is. Lemongrab is science unchecked, emotion engineered without stability, and as tragic as he is terrifying. He was never evil. He was unfinished, and he knows it. That quiet ache under the lemony chaos, that's science crying out for a soul. The Fire Kingdom's elemental technology. Let's drift now to another land one that burns instead of bubbles. The Fire Kingdom. It might seem primal. Blazing walls, lava moats, volcanic royalty. But hidden in its core is tech. Lots of it. The fire giants? Not just spirits. Constructs. Machines wrapped in heat and armor. The fire throne? Not just a symbol. A literal heat regulator that balances magic and physics in the kingdom. And Flame Princess? She's not just royal. She's the embodiment of an unstable energy field. Her emotional states directly impact the weather. Her heartbreak can cause wildfires. Her laughter can warm entire towns. She's not a character, she's a living reactor. And when she starts to understand that, when she learns that her powers have measurable, scalable output, she begins to study herself. We see blueprints, equations, measurements, fire quantified. And that's where the beauty of Oo's secret science lies, not in replacing magic with logic, but in blurring the line until it doesn't matter. You don't have to choose between spellbook and circuit board. You know, they're written in the same ink. The Cloud Kingdom, light as air, heavy as memory. Remember the Cloud Kingdom? It seems dreamy. A place where people float instead of walk, where gravity's more of a suggestion, and the rules feel soft. But this realm, it's made of data. Thin, wispy layers of memory and thought. In episodes like Grable's 1000 Plus, we get glimpses of the Cloud Kingdom's role in storing and preserving information. Not just air, but consciousness. There's an unsettling theory buried deep in lore that the Cloud Kingdom is built from the fragmented minds of the old world. Backup drives, lost signal. Neural networks reimagined as weather systems. The people who live here might not be people at all, but ghosts of code. Strands of personality trapped in ambient loops. And when characters visit, they often leave with a vague sense of déjà vu, as if something in the clouds remembered them. Or maybe remembered being them. Is this magic? Or a world's worth of data still trying to dream of itself? Either way, it's beautiful. And a little heartbreaking. Root systems. The biology of the land itself. Let's descend again. Not into cities, but into the dirt. Because one of the strangest and most easily overlooked features of Ooo is the living land. There are moments where the grass breathes, where the hills shift, where the ground seems to pulse. And in The More You Mow, the More You Know, we get our clearest look at what's going on. Deep beneath the surface, there are root systems not of trees, but of networks, long-lost tech, wires and vines tangled together, like a nervous system still firing impulses, long after its brain shut down. Some of this was built by Mo, creator of BMO and AMOs, robots built not just to function, or say, but to feel. And Mo's dream? To seed a world that would outgrow him, to build empathy into the earth itself. BMO doesn't just run on battery. He runs on legacy, a leftover strand of a human man's desire to make something better before he vanished into myth. And when BMO dreams, when he plays piano or writes poetry or laughs without reason, he's continuing that dream. Science that chose feeling over function. In a world where wires became wildflowers, the Magic Man arc, madness by design. Let's talk about Magic Man. Or as he once was, Normal Man. Weird, unpredictable, kind of terrible. But underneath the antics lies tragedy. You see, Magic Man wasn't just random. He was the result of an experiment gone wrong. He lost his wife, and in his grief, Martian scientists altered his brain chemistry, removing his moral center in an effort to spare him pain. What resulted? A being with genius-level magical skill and no empathy. Not a villain, but a broken man with scientific trauma embedded in his mind. It wasn't a curse. It was neurosurgery, done by people who thought they were helping. And eventually, as Normal Man, he tries to put the pieces back together. His journey is not just spiritual, it's neurological healing. The brain trying to rewire itself, to remember how to feel again. His redemption arc isn't about apology. It's about rehabilitation. And in that sense, it's science fiction of the softest kind. Quiet, gentle, deeply human. The uncanny realms, alternate physics at play. Now let's drift to the edges of Ooo, where things don't obey gravity, or logic, or time. There are episodes where the rules bend, like Puhoi, where Finn falls into a pillow realm and lives an entire lifetime, only to return a moment later. Or Dungeon Train, a looping labyrinth of battle and obsession. These places aren't dreams. They're pocket realities. Experiments in dimensional compression. Like test environments, simulations that never got shut off. Maybe remnants from before the war. Maybe mistakes. Maybe intentional. These realms don't just feel strange. They behave with precision, like they're governed by different rule sets entirely. It's easy to miss. But once you notice how mathematically these zones work, you start to wonder, who built them? Were they sanctuaries? Or containment fields? And are the people who get trapped there part of the test? It's never explained outright, because it doesn't need to be. The feeling is enough. That subtle sense that the world is more complex than it seems, and more artificial than we want to believe. The role of color in Oo's science. Think of how often colors shift in this world. A pink that fades to gray when PB is overwhelmed. A golden sky that turns green just before a curse. BMO's core glowing blue when he's dreaming. Red when he's afraid. This isn't just aesthetic. It's feedback. Much like machines in our world give visual cues error lights, temperature warnings, Progress Barsu's world does too. The hues respond to character states, to mood, to mental shifts. In the episode Evergreen, the world is cold, blue, ancient. A time before Ooo and the world was shaped not by magic, but by control. Technology framed in mysticism. Even the characters' color palettes feel unfinished, like early prototypes. Then you jump to islands. Suddenly everything is clean, sharp. The skies are soft. The building's clinical. It's not just visual, it's tonal. We're in a world built on reason, on safety, on sterile, scientific restraint. But even here, the color starts to creep back in as Finn unravels the emotional truths behind the walls. It's like Ooo remembers itself through color. PB's color drain. The pink that fades. Let's return to PB one last time. There are moments, quiet, easy to miss, where her pink dulls. Not from light, not from battle, from fatigue. In Varmints, when she's alone with Marceline in the wilderness, her hair looks almost gray, desaturated. Her skin pale. She's not sick, not cursed, just tired of leadership, of keeping everything perfect, of being the brain behind the curtain all the time. And the moment she laughs, the color comes back. It's not magic. It's biological self-expression. Like her body is a living status light, responding to her emotional load. She doesn't cry. She doesn't vent. She fades. And you wouldn't notice if you weren't watching closely. But once you do, you realize she's been showing us everything all along. Not through words, but through the color of her skin. And maybe that's the quietest science of all. The unseen architects. Was it always this way? Now let's float up one last time, past the Candy Kingdom, past the elemental borders, past the flame and snow and stars. Let's ask the question, who built this? Who left behind the framework? Was it the humans long ago? Did they build the foundation and then forget how it worked? Or was it something else? Maybe the world of Ooo is a recovery projector system reboot after the Mushroom War. The magic a byproduct of genetic decay. The candy and color an attempt to soothe the trauma of what came before. It feels possible. Think about it. The sentient grass. the glitching timelines, the layers of memory hidden in the clouds, the magic that behaves too predictably, too consistently, to be random. Like a world that learned how to feel by copying itself enough times, repetition, mutation, emotion, color, until it wasn't a program anymore. It was a place, a living archive of everything that came before it, stitched together with sugar, song, and silent science. And yet, it works. The miracle of Ooo isn't that it's magical. It's that it's functional. With all its broken science, failed experiments, unstable constructs, it still laughs. It still dreams. It still lives. That's what makes this hidden science so strangely beautiful. Because it never sought perfection. It just sought survival. And somewhere along the way, it found joy. Even Lemongrab, the unstable prototype, found companionship in another version of himself. Even Flame Princess learned to regulate her emotional surges. Even BMO, a tiny robot built for companionship, found a purpose bigger than programming. The science of Ooo was never about advancement. It was about reconnection, rebuilding emotion, rebuilding story, rebuilding meaning after a world forgot how to feel. And maybe that's why everything's so sweet on the surface, because underneath, it all came from something very hard, very cold. But it didn't stay that way. It evolved into light, into love, into weird candy science that somehow feel like home. So next time you watch a silly episode with dancing donuts or a peppermint guy doing necromancy, remember, you're not just watching magic. You're watching a world teach itself how to be alive again, one experiment at a time. Season 4, Episode 5, Return to the Nightosphere. It starts as a dream, a party, a trip, a blur of energy and color. But Finn wakes up in a cage, in the Nightosphere, with no memory of how he got there. And for the first few minutes, there are no words. Just distorted music, weird sounds, shifting lights, and Finn, silent, confused, alone. It feels like a bad dream you can't explain. And that's the point. This episode mimics the feeling of derealization when the world no longer feels real, when logic fails, when you wake up in a place that looks familiar, but feels wrong. Finn is surrounded by demons, strange rules, doors that don't open, and glimpses of Jake that vanish before he can reach them. It's horror, yes, but not with fangs and gore. It's horror made of confusion, of not knowing why you're here, of forgetting something important and having no way to remember. It's a dream turned prison, and even when he escapes, the unease lingers. That's the soft horror of Ooo. It doesn't chase you. It just stays in the corners, in the pauses between lines. Season 5, Episode 12, Vault of Bones. This episode is subtle, quiet, focused mostly on Flame Princess and her morality. But the dungeon they explore is full of repetition. Corridors that loop, rooms that seem copied and pasted. It's a classic horror setup, a space that feels alive, that reshapes itself when you're not looking. And the horror isn't just external. It's inside Flame Princess. She doesn't trust herself. She's terrified that her nature is corrupt. That violence is not just something she does, but something she is. She smiles, jokes, plays along. But there's tension behind every line. It's the fear of being made wrong, of being a walking mistake, of hurting someone not because you chose to, but because you couldn't help it. This kind of horror doesn't jump out at you. It curls around your chest and waits, quietly, Season 6, Episode 2, Escape from the Citadel. This one is tragic horror. The kind that leaves you staring at the ceiling long after the episode ends. We meet Finn's father, and for a moment, it feels like joy. A reunion. A family restored. But it isn't. Martin is selfish. Cowardly. He abandons Finn almost immediately. No excuse, no deeper meaning. He just doesn't care. And that's the horror here. Not monsters. Not death. But neglect. Finn's face as his father floats away is quiet devastation. No screams. No dramatic tears. Just silence. And then, to make it worse, his arm is torn off moments later. No build-up. Just a quick, irreversible loss. The Citadel dissolves into chaos. And so does Finn's world. This is the kind of horror that grows. It starts with a single crack, then spreads through everything you thought you understood. Season 5, Episode 48. Betty. Here we see Simon's slow unraveling. Not as Ice King, but as a man trying to come back from madness. He gains a sliver of clarity, just enough to know what he's lost. To remember Betty, the woman who once loved him. He reaches across dimensions. She answers. And for a moment, you hope, you believe. But as always in Ooo, the science and magic twist together. What Betty finds isn't the man she knew. It's someone half frozen, half forgotten. The horror here is in the fragility of recovery. How memory can flicker. How love can return, but not quite right. Betty sacrifices everything. And it still might not be enough. That lingering sadness, beneath that almost hope, is the softest kind of nightmare. The one where you wake up and still feel like something's missing. And maybe that's the thread between all these episodes. They don't want to scare you. They just want to show you that sometimes the scariest things in the world aren't monsters in the dark. Season 5, Episode 36, Jake the Brick. At first glance, this episode seems calm, even cozy. Jake hides in the forest, pretending to be a brick narrating the life of a bunny trying to rebuild its home. The world goes on. But slowly it becomes unsettling. Why is Jake doing this? Why isolate himself like this? Why fixate on someone else's struggle? Because Jake's escaping something. We never find out what exactly, but it hangs in the silence. The bunny's routine becomes obsessively detailed. Jake's voice becomes serious, focused, hypnotic. And in the background, Finn is worried, calling out, searching. But Jake stays still, buried, not just in the dirt, but in detachment. It's soft horror of the emotional kind, disassociation. The feeling that you're slipping away quietly, and no one can quite reach you. It's beautiful, it's poetic, and it's quietly alarming. Season 6, Episode 17, Ghostfly. Now this one plays the horror card more directly, but still with that strange, dreamlike Adventure Time twist. BMO believes there's a ghost in the house. And then, there is. A ghost fly. But instead of fear, BMO responds with obsession, investigation, paranoia. And suddenly, the treehouse becomes unfamiliar. Dark corners, shadowed stairways, clocks ticking in strange rhythms. The sound design is key here. It mimics classic horror with a touch of surrealism. But it's BMO's perspective that makes it haunting. Because when you're small, when you don't understand everything becomes suspect. The episode becomes a lens into childhood fear. The kind where you're not sure if the fear is real. or just something your brain made up. And even when it's resolved, the unease never really goes away. Because what if it wasn't about the ghost? What if it was about loneliness? And the ghost was just a shape loneliness decided to wear. Season 7, Episode 6. Marceline the Vampire Queen. This episode carries a different kind of unease. Marceline decides to remove her vampirism, to finally live, to let go of immortality, to change. But the process isn't gentle. She's hooked up to machines, IV lines filled with magic, wires, needles, pulsing lights. She screams in pain. She drifts into hallucinations. She revisits memories that feel more like hauntings. These aren't ghosts in cloaks. They're shadows of herself, who she used to be, who she might have been, what she might lose. And then, as her body fights the change, we see flashes of war, of destruction, of the horrors she lived through during the fall of the old world. She relives traumas we never saw before, moments that shaped her but were buried for decades. And that's the horror here. Memory as a monster. Past versions of yourself showing up in dreams, demanding to be felt. There's no evil villain here. Just recovery. Which is always a little terrifying. Because healing isn't soft. It's not peaceful. It's loud. It hurts. And it costs. But Marceline keeps going. Because some fears are worth walking through. Even the ones wearing your own face. Season 5, Episode 30, Frostfire. Now let's talk about Finn's nightmare. This episode starts playfully a rivalry between Flame Princess and Ice King. But Finn encourages it. He enjoys the chaos, the passion, the fighting, and then he dreams. In his sleep, he relives the tension, the fire, the cold, the power. And his reaction is disturbing. He likes it. He smiles in his sleep, his face half lit by fire, his voice murmuring, yeah. And when he wakes up, he's ashamed. Because the nightmare wasn't a horror show. It was a fantasy. And that's what haunts him. Not a monster, not a curse, but his own reaction. This is psychological horror at its softest and most devastating. It shows how easy it is to cross a line and not even realize it until you're already on the other side. Finn's character cracks here. Just a little. But enough that it lingers for episodes afterward. That's real fear. And maybe that's the heart of soft horror in Adventure Time. It doesn't need jump scares or monsters in closets. Because sometimes the scariest thing is what you felt and didn't expect to feel. A quiet ache in the chest. A dream you didn't want to wake up from. A moment where you realize you're not the hero in that memory, you were the cause. It's subtle, lingering, a sadness that whispers, maybe you're not who you thought you were. But here's the twist. Adventure Time never stays in that darkness. Not forever. It doesn't deny the fear or the trauma or the broken dreams. It just wraps them in soft colors, in candy, in music, in grace. It lets those shadows sit at the table, but never lets them eat alone. Season 6, Episode 43, The Comet. This episode begins with wonder. Finn is pulled into space, drifting toward a mysterious cometone that speaks, and what it offers him is terrifying in its calmness. It offers release. It tells Finn he doesn't have to keep struggling, that he can leave Ooo, transcend everything, become something more. It's not a monster, not a villain. It's peace. And that's what makes it so deeply unsettling. Because the horror here isn't death. It's the possibility that none of this, the pain, the adventure, the love mattered. That he could leave it behind, and nothing would change. It's existential horror. The kind that creeps in late at night when you're staring at the ceiling. The voice that asks, "Why are you doing any of this?" And Finn says no, not out of fear, but because he chooses meaning. He chooses to keep struggling, to stay flawed, to stay human. And that choice, that defiance of cosmic detachment, is both heroic and quietly devastating. Because we realize he's grown so much. And with growth comes the soft horror of letting go, of innocence, of easy answers, of the comfort of nothing matters. He chooses to hurt, and to keep going anyway. That's the most powerful and quietly terrifying choice of all. Season 10, Episode 13. Come along with me. The final episode. You wouldn't expect horror here. It's a farewell, a song, a battle, a memory. But then comes Golb, a swirling, silent entity of chaos, a being that doesn't scream or growl. It vibrates. Its presence warps everything. Not with heat or weight, but with discord. Melody disrupted. Shape undone. Golb is fear beyond comprehension. A god of unraveling. And when it absorbs Simon, we see what true horror looks like in Ooo, and not death, but the loss of self. Simon's mind begins to break again. His memories dissolve. He forgets who he is, what he loves, why he ever mattered. And yet, in the center of this horror, Betty reaches for him and sings a lullaby, a plea, a reminder. The chaos doesn't stop, but it pauses. Long enough for love to do something science and magic couldn't, to change the shape of fear itself. Golb isn't defeated with power, or spell, or swords. He's touched, however briefly, by music, by meaning. And then he's gone. That's the kind of ending Adventure Time dares to offer. Not one where evil is destroyed, but one where understanding is enough. It doesn't erase the horror. It just outlasts it, softly, gently, in a song. The final whisper, fear, familiar and kind. In all of these stories, Ooo never tells us to be fearless. It never says, don't be afraid. Instead it says, it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to not understand. It's okay to hurt. Because Adventure Time knows something most stories forget. That true horror doesn't come from the dark. It comes from being seen, from being vulnerable, from being real in a world that sometimes forgets how to care. And it teaches us how to sit with that, how to hold the ghost's hand, how to look into the swirling face of a god of chaos, and hum a tune anyway. The soft horror of Ooo is not about shock. It's about echo. It's about how things stay with you, in our dreams, in our doubts, in our quietest moments. And maybe that's the secret. That softness isn't the absence of fear. It's what fear becomes when we learn how to live with it. So the next time an episode leaves you with a strange feeling, like you've forgotten something important, or remembered something you never lived, sit with it. Let the silence speak. Because in Ooo, even nightmares are gentle. Even fear is wrapped in music. And even echoes eventually fade into lullabies. James Baxter, the horse with a balloon and a bow. You've probably seen him. James Baxter. A horse who rolls in on a beach ball, makes a soothing James Baxter tilde sound, and leaves everyone feeling better. No dialogue, No backstory, just comfort. But the more you see him, the stranger and sadder he becomes. In Horse and Ball, we finally go behind the smile. And what do we find? Someone who needs to comfort others, almost desperately. It's not a performance. It's a coping mechanism. There's this moment, blink and you'll miss it, where he sees someone he can't help. Someone whose sadness is just too big. And he breaks. He leaves the ball behind. The catchphrase. The whole persona. And for a few seconds, we see the real James Baxter. Just a lonely soul, who's tired of pretending he's okay by making everyone else feel better. And yet, by the end of the episode, he chooses to return. Not because he's healed. Not because the world is suddenly bright. But because helping others is his way of healing. That is quiet heroism. And deep, subtle heartbreak. Mr. Cupcake muscles and misunderstanding. At first glance, Mr. Cupcake is comic relief. A muscle-bound cupcake with a confident strut, and a voice that sounds like he's ready to announce the end of days. But dig just a little deeper, and you realize he's lonely. Chronically misunderstood. In all the little people, we see how Finn imagines him. Alone, working out, shouting into the void, trying to make someone, anyone, notice him. And in 5 short tables, he gives a poetry reading. And it's beautiful, full of sadness, of longing, of softness hidden beneath the bravado. Lines like, "The frosting melts in the sun, but no one tastes what I hide inside." That's not a joke. That's a cry. He sculpted his body to be admired. But his heart, he hides it behind protein shakes and overly confident flexing. And no one seems to notice. But we do. Now we do. Choose goose nonsense or tragedy. Here's one you may not have thought twice about. Choose Goose, the goofy rhyming merchant. Dropping riddles and rhymes and oddball phrases that often don't make sense. But in The Vault, he's not there to be funny. He's the one who helps Finn unlock a memory. A traumatic one, a reincarnation-level memory. And Choose Goose knows. He's not confused, not silly, just quiet, almost wise. It's like he chooses to be goofy, to disarm others, to protect himself. But there's weight behind his eyes. And if you listen closely to his rhymes, they often contain warnings, truths, buried in wordplay. Was he once someone else? Something else? Or is he just older than he looks? Choose Goose is a background character with a soul that feels a little out of time. And maybe that's why he makes you feel just a little strange when he's around. Cinnamon Bun. The fool who wasn't. Okay, let's talk about Cinnamon Bun. At first, he's nothing more than comic relief. Barely coherent. Melting. Clumsy. Sticky. But then comes the Red Throne. He leaves the Candy Kingdom, and something changes. He becomes whole. Outside PB's kingdom, outside these sugar-coated expectations, Cinnamon Bun begins to think clearly. He makes decisions. He protects Flame Princess. He even becomes her royal guardian. And this shift, it's never flashy, never loudly declared. It's just there. A transformation that happens when no one's watching. And maybe that's the point. Because sometimes it's the system that keeps someone from being seen as whole. And sometimes the fool is only a fool because he was never taken seriously. Until he left. Until he grew. Until he proved that he was always more than what anyone believed. Even us. Each of these characters, James Baxter, Mr. Cupcake, Choose Goose. cinnamon, bundrift, quietly along the edges of the frame. We laughed at them, shrugged them off, forgot their names. But now, they don't feel so forgettable, do they? Because in Ooo, even the smallest background character has a story worth sitting with. They're not just filling space. They're carrying whole little worlds of their own. Peppermint Butler, always watching, always knowing. Now Peppermint Butler has become more well-known in the deeper lore, but for a long, long time, he was just the candy butler. Polite, helpful, charming. But something was always off. Why does a peppermint know dark magic? Why is he always popping up in cursed forests or summoning demons in secret? He's always been in the background of PB's plans, quietly helping her with political alliances, ancient tomes, and even prison breaks. And the eerie part? No one questions it. No one in the Candy Kingdom seems to find it strange that their most beloved treat is also an occultist, with connections to death, Hunson Abadir, and possibly things much darker. It's like he's not just in the background of scenes, he's in the background of the world, manipulating it, smoothing it, keeping it just stable enough. He's not evil, but he's definitely not innocent either. And if you watch his scenes again, you'll notice something. He's never surprised by anything, not even Golb. That's the kind of background presence that doesn't need to speak loudly to be unforgettable. Tree trunks. The elephant with a past. Sweet little tree trunks. Apple pies. A soft southern accent. A cozy cottage in the woods. But then boom. She's running criminal deals in outer space. Married to an alien king. Carrying out secret missions. It's funny, sure. But beneath the humor is something kind of heartbreaking. Because Tree Trunks doesn't belong in the world she pretends to be part of. She tries the domestic life. The quiet countryside. The baking and friendship and tea parties. But she always ends up drifting away. Back to chaos. Back to secrecy. Back to adventure. You start to wonder, was the domestic life ever real? Or was it a mask? A performance of peace that never quite fit? Tree Trunks is one of those characters who seems soft on the outside, but whose truth is harder to hold. She's seen things, done things, and she hides it all behind crumbles of pie crust and a smile that sometimes doesn't quite reach her eyes. Tiffany, a life of wanting to belong. Then we have Tiffany. Yes, Tiffany. Not a major villain. Not a major anything, really. Just this awkward, squirmy little guy, desperate to be Jake's best friend. And that's what makes his story sting. Because Tiffany isn't evil. He's lonely. He's the kid who got left out, who tried too hard, who made people uncomfortable by simply wanting too much. And every time he appears, it's little more tragic. He's trying to prove himself. Trying to belong. But Jake keeps brushing him off, not cruelly, but casually. As if Tiffany's longing is too small to be taken seriously. But it is serious. Because we all know what it feels like to want someone to choose you as a friend, as a partner, as family. And when Tiffany spirals into villainy, it's not out of hatred. It's out of heartbreak. That's a soft kind of tragedy most shows would overlook. But Adventure Time quietly lets it happen, in the background. So gently that you almost miss it. Banana Man kindness, curiosity, and isolation. Banana Man might be one of the strangest minor characters in Ooo. A lonely, somewhat reclusive scientist, living on the edge of the world, watching the stars and sending out signals to space. He's awkward, uncertain, often ignored, but he's kind, so kind. And what makes him quietly haunting is the way he always seems to be on the verge of discovery, whether it's cosmic truth or just the joy of having a friend. In The Visitor, he and Finn sit on a hill, and for once, Banana Man isn't in the background. He's just there, talking, laughing, trying. And when Finn asks if he wants to come along, his reaction is so pure, so honest. Like someone who hasn't been invited to anything in years. That's the heartbreak. Not in what he's lost, but in how little he's ever been seen. A kind soul, quietly broadcasting messages into the void, hoping someone will answer. And eventually, someone does. Gunter, the one who was more than a penguin. To most people in Ooo, Gunter is just a cute penguin. A waddling sidekick, a honker, a bit of Ice King's comic relief. But then, the truth peeks through. In Orgalore, we learn Gunter is actually a cosmic entity, a powerful ancient being known as Orgalorg, feared across the stars, once imprisoned inside a small, silly body. And here's the eerie part. Even before that reveal, Gunter always had these strange little moments, stealing magical artifacts, secretly shape-shifting, letting out an odd, dark laugh when no one's watching. It's easy to miss, but it's there, as if the show is quietly whispering, this one isn't what they seem. And yet, even after the reveal, Gunter chooses to remain a penguin. To return to that soft, absurd form. Why? Maybe because even cosmic beings get tired. Maybe because in a world of chaos and history and ancient lore, being silly and small is a kind of peace. Gunter's story isn't one of power. It's one of retreat, of choosing softness over dominion. And in a strange way, that might be the most powerful decision of all. Canyon, a glimpse of old adventure. Canyon only appears a few times. She's calm, mysterious, part of the old guard of adventurers. In Billy's bucket list, she helps Finn fulfill one last wish of Billy's. And in the quiet between scenes, you sense a deep history. Canyon isn't loud. She doesn't shout her story. But it's there in her stillness. In the way she talks about the world, in the way she carries her gear. It's like she's seen so much more than she ever lets on, but doesn't need to say it. She doesn't want glory. She just wants to finish what was started. There's a sadness in that, a weight. Like someone who outlived her era, but still walks the path because she doesn't know where else to go. She reminds us that not all legends fade into myths. Some just keep walking quietly, long after the cheering has stopped. Root Beer Guy, the worker who knew. Then there's Root Beer Guy, a background candy citizen, mild-mannered, working a desk job, invisible in every crowd. Until one day, he notices something wrong, and instead of ignoring it, he investigates. He risks his life, follows clues, uncovers truths no one else is paying attention to. And what does he get for it? A promotion. But not because he craved power, just because he cared. He's the embodiment of that quiet thought. What if you're the only one who sees the problem? Will you do something anyway? It's not flashy. It's not heroic in the traditional sense, but it's important. And that makes him unforgettable. Because deep down, we all want to believe that the quiet good guys can still win sometimes. The reflection. Backgrounds are not empty. So what does it all mean? Why spend so much time on these characters who barely spoke, who barely appeared, who most people wouldn't remember by name? Because in Adventure Time, there are no true background characters. Every candy citizen, every beast, every reclusive scientist, ancient penguin, or quiet cupcake is carrying a full life just beyond what the camera shows. And that's what makes Ooo feel real. It's not a stage built for just Finn and Jake. It's a whole world with moving parts and beating hearts that don't stop just because they're not on screen. There's something deeply comforting in that, because it mirrors our own world, doesn't it? How many people pass through our days without ever speaking a word to us, yet carry whole galaxies of thoughts, memories, and quiet pain? How many background people have stories that would move us if we only stopped to ask? In Ooo, the writers stopped to ask. And that's what made the magic, a lullaby for the overlooked. So tonight, as you drift into sleep, maybe think of one of them. Maybe picture Banana Man staring at the stars, hoping someone hears his signal. Or Cinnamon Bun standing tall beside a fiery princess, finally sure of who he is. Maybe Gunter curled up under a blanket, choosing to dream instead of conquer. Because they're still out there, in the corners, in the quiet, waiting to be noticed, not for fame, not for praise, just to be seen, even for a moment. So here's to the lonely, the forgotten, the ones in the background. You were never really behind. You were just waiting for your moment. And now, you've had it. Softly. Gently. You've been heard. We're entering the world of the dream episodes, those strange, wandering, quiet chapters of Adventure Time, where things didn't add up, where nothing was explained, where meaning floated just out of reach. But somehow, deep down, you knew it meant something. Not because your brain understood, but because your heart did. Let's take one last soft walk through those odd, cozy corners of Ooo, where weirdness feels like poetry and nonsense feels like truth. Season 5, Episode 17, All the Little People. It starts with a gift from Magic Man. A bag of tiny versions of everyone in Ooo. Finn uses them to play, to simulate life, to explore relationships like some giant puppet master. It should feel silly, but it doesn't. It feels intimate, quiet, almost voyeuristic. Finn watches how the tiny people fall in love, how they argue, and how they grow apart. And the weird part? They start doing things he didn't program. The dolls become real, or at least real enough. And suddenly Finn's not a player anymore. He's just a witness. There's a strange ache in this episode. A loneliness. Finn's growing up. And he's using these little figures to understand something his heart doesn't know how to explain yet. Love. Control. Letting go. And then he does let go. He buries the little people. Says goodbye. And it doesn't feel like he lost a toy. It feels like he lost a part of himself, a version of him that needed to stop pretending he could control how things turn out. And then the quietest, strangest way is growth. Season 6, Episode 3, James II. Let's drift even deeper. This episode follows a clone, James, or rather a bunch of clones of James. They've built a society, a routine, a strange little echo of the Candy Kingdom. And they worship the original James. But here's the dreamlike twist. The James clones begin to malfunction, to decay, to fear one another. The whole episode is offbeat, quieter than usual. Voices slightly slower, movement slightly stiffer. Like watching someone else's memory play out underwater. It's surreal, almost uncomfortable. But it raises a haunting question. If you're a copy, but you feel pain, feel joy, feel fear, does that make you real? Are you less because you were made instead of born? And if no one remembers you, were you ever really here? That kind of existential dread isn't shouted in this episode. It just sits there, in the colors, in the way the music hums. Not a nightmare, just a question. Season 7, Episode 23, Crossover. This one's a bit more active, more adventure. But if you look past the multiverse hijinks and the cool alt costumes, you'll realize you're watching a dream of choices. Finn visits Farm World, a version of himself who lived without magic, without Jake, without joy. And even when Finn saves the day, even when the universe is corrected, Farm World Finn still exists. Alone, unchanged, unaware. A forgotten version of yourself and Jai, locked in a path you never meant to walk. This is the dream logic of Adventure Time. That you can do everything right and still leave behind versions of yourself that didn't get the happy ending. And you don't get to go back for them. You just carry them in your sleep, in your regrets, in the shadows of your dreams. And that's the quiet magic of these episodes. They don't teach with words. They don't explain everything. They just happen, like real dreams. Season 7, Episode 25, Normal Man. This one follows Magic Man, or now Normal Man. Stripped of his powers, stripped of his madness, left human. Or at least as close to it as he can get. He's on a journey to make amends, to reconnect with his brother Glober, what's left of him. And the whole episode feels like a memory someone else had. Desert landscapes, floating heads, conversations that dance between sincere and absurd. It should feel ridiculous, but it doesn't. Because under the surface, this is a story about forgiveness, about identity, about who you are when all the things that made you you are taken away. Normal Man isn't sure who he is without his chaos. Oh, without his magic, without the voice in his head. And yet, he keeps trying. Even when his brother, floating and silent, won't give him answers. Even when the universe doesn't tell him what comes next, he tries. And that's what makes it feel like a dream we've all had. The kind where you're not sure what you did wrong, but you're trying to make it right anyway, in a world that doesn't speak your language anymore. Season 8, Episode 4, Broke His Crown. This episode takes place inside Ice King's mind. Literally. Marceline and Princess Bubblegum use science magic to dive in, and what they find is terrifyingly soft. Memories folded into each other. Ice King's voices, Simon, Gunther, the madness, all colliding. It's beautiful and broken and surreal. Inside his head are corridors of trauma, rooms locked with memories of Betty, floating echoes of things he doesn't remember anymore. It's a haunted house made of identity. And yet, it's gentle. PB and Marceline walk through it with care. Not to fight. Not to fix him. But just to see. To understand. And that's what makes it one of the most quietly moving episodes of the show. Not because it explains everything, but because it doesn't. Because identity is messy. Especially when it's been rewritten by a magic crown. The whole episode feels like walking through someone's dream while they're sleeping beside you. And by the end, you're not sure who needed the healing more, Simon. Or you. Season 9, Episode 5. Whispers. Now, this one isn't a dream sequence on the surface, but the way it feels, absolutely dreamlike. Finn is warned about something dangerous, a whisper in the trees, a presence in the woods. And when he finds it, it's Sweet Pea, the quiet, kind child, with the lich inside him. The entire episode is filled with soft tension. No jump scares. No music stings. Just a creeping fear that something ancient and evil is walking in tiny shoes, smiling politely, and playing with toys. The horror is so subtle, so gentle, that it becomes dreamlike. Not quite a nightmare, but close. Like the feeling you get when you wake up from a dream where someone you love was someone else entirely, and you don't know whether to be afraid or to hold them tighter. That's Sweet Pea. That's Whispers. Season 10, Episode 2. Always BMO closing. And now let's drift sideways into a full-on fever dream. BMO and Ice King go on a salesman adventure, selling dreams across a surreal city, talking to frogs, floating through shapes. At first it feels like filler and like nonsense. But then you start to feel it. This isn't about what's happening. It's about what isn't. It's about what Ice King wants. To connect. To have purpose. To be needed. And BMO, in their own bizarre way, gives him that. They play along. They make it real. None of it makes sense. Because that's how friendship sometimes works. Especially with people who are hard to reach. You don't always speak the same language. You don't always walk the same path. But you show up. You sell dreams. You sit beside them while they ramble. And somehow, in the middle of all the nonsense, you share something true. That's what Always BMO Closing captures so perfectly. The way that connection can bloom, even in the most chaotic, nonsensical spaces. These dream episodes don't try to impress. They don't ask you to understand every line. They don't follow traditional structure. They just are. Like actual dreams, they leave you with a feeling you can't quite put into words. A warmth, or a chill, or a whisper that lingers even after the credits roll. Season 10, Episode 7. Marcy Hunson. Now, at first glance, this feels like a classic father-daughter episode. Hunson Abadir returns. Marceline's conflicted. PB is annoyed. And hijinks follow. But under all that chaos is a dreamlike contradiction. Here's a father who's a literal demon, trying to make amends by acting like a regular dad taking selfies, offering gifts, trying to bond over music. But he doesn't understand her. Not really. And maybe he never will. The episode plays out like a recurring dream. You're back with someone who hurt you. They say they've changed. They act normal, but deep down, you're waiting for the floor to drop out. Marceline wants to believe him. She wants to believe that people can change. But Hunson is still Hunson. Powerful, distracted, clumsy with emotions. It's not a clean resolution. They don't hug it out and erase the past. But Marceline plays a song. And for a moment, just a moment, they connect. It's messy. It's incomplete. It's real. And that's what makes it feel like a dream we've all had. One where reconciliation doesn't look the way it's supposed to. But it's something. A thread. A soft stitch in a scar that never fully closed. Season 9, Episode 12. Ring of Fire. This one follows Flame Princess's dad, the Flame King, a character so often portrayed as absurd, irredeemable, or just gross. But Ring of Fire gives him a stage to do something strange. He tells his life story in front of an open mic crowd. And the whole episode feels like a surreal confessional dream. It jumps between his past relationships, his mistakes, his manipulations, all framed through song. It's not exactly coherent. You're not always sure if he's being honest or just performing redemption. But that's what makes it fascinating. It feels like his dream, his version of events, a stylized retelling of how he became who he is, with a little too much drama, a little too much flair, and a desperate need to be forgiven. It's not that he deserves sympathy, but the episode makes you wonder, what do villains dream of? What does regret sound like when it's sung through flames? Season 10, Episode 10, Jake the Star Child. This one takes surreal to another level entirely. Jake meets his alien father, learns about his interstellar heritage, finds out he might be cosmic royalty, and yet the whole thing is played so quietly. Jake doesn't react with shock. He doesn't run or cry or celebrate. He just rolls with it, like someone deep in a dream who knows something strange is happening, but doesn't want to wake up. There's a scene where Jake floats in a weird metaphysical void listening to his dad explain fate and prophecy. And Jake's response? He just wants to go home. Not because he doesn't care, but because home is real. Adventure is real. His life is real, and this whole Star Child storyline, it's just another layer. Jake's groundedness in the face of cosmic absurdity is what makes this episode feel like a lucid dream, one where you're offered some enormous truth and gently say, no thanks, I think I'm good. Season 9, Episode 4, Cloudy. This one is slow, dreamily slow. Finn and Jake are caught in a rainstorm. They take shelter inside a cloud. And that's basically it. They talk. They rest. They make food. They air out their feelings. Nothing happens, and yet everything matters. Jake is scared. He's been holding in emotions. And Finn, in his own sweet way, coaxes it out. There's a moment where Jake, usually so carefree, talks about being tired. Not physically, emotionally, spiritually. And it lands softly, like a raindrop sliding down a window. The cloud becomes a dream space, a liminal realm between battles and story arcs. A space where real feelings are finally allowed to surface. It's peaceful. It's weird. It's perfectly adventure time. Because even the weather in this show knows how to give you space to feel. You see, these episodes don't scream to be remembered. They don't resolve in obvious ways. They don't build toward some grand climax. Instead, they drift through you, like dreams after dawn. You might forget the dialogue. You might forget the plot. But the feeling, that stays. Season 5, Episode 14. Simon Marcy. We've talked about this one before. It's beloved. But even among the well-known episodes, this one stands out as a dream of the past. Because it doesn't feel like a story. It feels like remembering a dream you once had as a child. A dream where someone took care of you. Someone who was slowly falling apart, but held your hand anyway. The episode floats between memory and hallucination. Simon, still fighting the Crown's influences, sings the Cheers theme song like it's a lullaby. Marcy clings to him, not yet a vampire. Just a scared, hungry girl in a ruined world. There are no monsters in this dream. No jump scares. Just a sense that the world ended, but love kept walking anyway. It's soft, sad, and warm in the strangest way, because even in the ruins, someone stayed with you. Season 10, Episode 13. Come Along With Me. The final episode. It shouldn't be dreamy, it's the big finale. And yet, the way it flows across time, across characters, across memories and maybes, it feels like the closing dream before waking up. You see BMO far in the future, telling the story of Ooo as if it were a legend from another world. You see old enemies finding peace, old friends letting go, wars that end not with destruction, but with a song. There's a moment where Finn and Ferntu versions of the same Soli beside each other under the tree. Quiet. Still. No fighting. No triumph. Just rest. It's the kind of image that lingers long after the credits fade. A picture of wholeness. Of acceptance. Not a happily ever after, but something better. A soft exhale at the end of a long, wild life. And you, now here you are. You've traveled through quiet towns, forgotten corners, lost voices, and floating dreamscapes. You've listened to tales that didn't always make sense, not in the logical way. But maybe they felt right. Because dreams don't ask for clarity. They ask for trust. Trust that even if you don't know where you're going, there's something waiting for you at the end. A lesson. A memory. A feeling. Something that settles gently on your chest as you close your eyes and let go of the day. Adventure time. Never cared much for rules. It told its stories like dreams, where a penguin could hold the universe inside, where a horse on a ball could heal the broken-hearted, where mistakes echoed across dimensions, but even in the echoes, love still whispered through. These episodes were never meant to explain everything. They were meant to remind us that feelings don't always need logic, that not all questions need answers, and that sometimes being confused is part of the magic. Because when you stop demanding meaning, you start feeling it. In the silence, in the weirdness, in the stillness that waits after the last line is spoken. So now, dear listener, as the final threads of Ooo drift softly through your thoughts, it's okay to let your mind wander too. You don't need to remember every episode. You don't need to untangle every metaphor. Just hold the feeling, that warm, dreamy strangeness, that adventure time gave us, when nothing made sense, but everything felt right. Good night, adventurer. You've walked through time and memory, through candy and chaos, and through dreams and silence. Let the quiet hold you now. Let the strange feel safe. And as your thoughts fade into your own sleepy episodes tonight, remember, you were part of something magical, even if it didn't always make sense, especially because it didn't.